On my tractor.
Okay, we're just testing the sound right now. Eva, you get sound up?
Eva, you get sound up?
Yep. We're good.
Okay. Hey, Chris, we got a pressure cooker going in the background. Is that a problem there? Yeah, like I say, we got this. We're in the middle of cooking a batch of meatballs, and to shut it down and restart would take a lot of time. So we're gonna try. Oh, it's solid discharging. Yeah. Is that a problem for people listening? I mean, is that going to be an issue, or is it no big deal? Hey, Forrest! Man, haven't seen you in a while. Love to get together sometime. Starts trying to throw your weight off, turn it down? Oh, okay. Okay. That's good. I won't worry about it then. Oh. Hi, Old Med. How's it going? And Dee Dee. See how easy is that? Okay, right about here. Yeah, it still doesn't show the pink as well. That's not too bad. There, that's about right. Yeah, that's some of Dee Dee's rose quartz. A little pinker than that in real life. Nice and clear, but it's shattered pretty good. Hello, Rick. Hi, John from Texas. Oh my God, permitting and access issues. Yeah, the usual. Okay, let's see. Just for jollies, let me just see how all these others. Oh. Yeah, that doesn't show too well. How about a much thinner piece? That's not too bad. Gives you an idea about what it looks like.
The Forrest says hold it a little lower, which I agree with. You can hold it as off the screen.
Well, that's so I can see something. Otherwise, right in front of my face. Yeah, see, that's actually pink.
Dee Dee says if you can, you might want to tone down the lights.
Yeah, I can't.
Forrest says perfect.
Yeah.
I have an idea on the light.
Eva has an idea.
How's that? Any better, people?
Yeah, a little bit.
It looks good on the screen.
A little bit, yeah. Okay. Howdy, folks. I'm Keith Bowen. This is live from the Adobe Hovel. And we're going to discuss a number of things today. First of all, this is the rose quartz from Dee Dee's claim, from Dee Dee Holcomb. And it's actually a little pinker than what you see. It's not a bright pink rose quartz, but it's a good color and it's fairly clear. So it's been shattered badly, though, apparently from dynamiting in the past. But if it's not that badly broken in situ, that would be some nice carving stone. It's really quite pretty. So I say, that's pretty good. Eva says the energy is gone from the blasting, so, you know, it's not good for metaphysical tools.
Working.
Let's see. Well, yeah, but they don't know what that means. Okay. How's smoking joking? Okay. Let's see. So we got that. I have a list because when you're as old as I am, you need a list. Report on.
Old says they know what working stone means.
Okay. Anyhow, report on the minor Bago. There's at least one other piston substantially damaged. Another one had a cracked ring. So we're replacing all the pistons, and we're going to go to a lower compression ratio piston. The assumption is, according to the experts, because I have no opinion on this, that is probably detonation. That engine runs at high temperatures, high power outputs, climbing hills and stuff. And if you get detonation, even though I've retarded the timing a couple degrees, it just pounds the cylinder. So looking at the bearing wear.
Forrest, no!
Yes, Forrest is here.
Yeah, and Forrest says put it out of its misery.
No. New set of pistons should be on the rods Monday. And then as soon as I get a day off, me and Jim will start reassembling everything. That's all we're waiting for now. We got all the gaskets and this and that and the other, and it's going to be a long reassembly process. But anyhow, let's see. Got the quartz. Just mentioning again, my brother's selling a MineLab GPX 5000 in good condition. The new concentrator seems to be doing reasonably well. It's really hard to tell at this point because I've got samples over there ready to be shipped out tomorrow. But without assays, I can't tell what's left in the slimes. However, Ryan came by yesterday, picked up the super concentrates, and we actually recovered into beads 0.35 ounces per ton. Okay.
Forrest says to price that on MineLab in terms of the metal detector. Dee Dee's truck is still in the shop, so no idea when it will come out.
Yeah.
And Chris points out, quite accurately as usual, that pistons and rings are cheap by comparison to the rest of the cost for opening an engine.
Don't know what the price is on the MineLab, but basically something around fair market value for now. May come down cheaper as we go. It was $5,000 initially. It was $4,000 fair market value when Randy bought it. I'm guessing it's somewhere in the neighborhood between 2 and 3 right now, but I haven't looked it up. Can you look that up on eBay without too much trouble, little one?
Yeah, I can look it up right now.
Okay, she's going to look it up. But anyhow, so
And what kind of MineLab is it?
a MineLab GPX 5000. And anyhow, the ore theoretically is running about 1/3 to 1/2 an ounce to the ton based on previous assays, but until I get an assay of the actual head grade, the actual tailings and slimes and stuff, I'm just kind of guessing. But that looks like pretty good recovery.
On eBay,
You know,
the huge kits are going for like $3,900 with all kinds of stuff in them, about $4,000.
about 4,000 for a GPX 5000 used.
Yep.
Okay.
However, those ones look like they have a lot of stuff in them that yours
Yep.
does not. They have the carry bag, fine pouch, and 2 search coils.
Yeah, pretty much. Anyhow, looks like I'm getting at worst somewhere around 70% recovery with a concentrator, at most 100% recovery. We'll see what happens when we get some assays. And that brings me up to another thing.
Winnie the Tracy points out aluminum heads are more compression and runs cooler. A higher compression motor will make more power than a low compression motor. Just saying.
Yeah, it will, but we've had to actually stop several times climbing grades just to let the engine cool off, high idle it until it cools. So lower compression should also make it a little bit cooler. And Those beads were from the super concentrates that I got from the head ore. The head ore running about 0.35 to 0.5 ounces per ton. Hey, Jason, I'm in the middle of a live stream. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Bye. And
I'm checking out a few other sources for prices on that metal detector. And Rick Dees wants to know, does fluid bed separators work? Ever try running cons in one after panning?
depends on the kind of fluid bed separator. With the stuff I'm running, probably not the upwelling fluid bed concentrator too much. Now let's see what we can see here. Now there, you can see it's pretty yellow, not bright shiny yellow, but nevertheless fairly yellow. That was, I took the super concentrates and did one little thing to it and probably got it to like 80% gold or better right now. And Chris knows what it is. What I did was I took another pan, once I got my super concentrates, and I coated it, this side right here, with motor oil, and then just panned. And the gold tends to stick to the motor oil. Now, Chris, Georgie, says he's used Vaseline in the past. In the little pre-show there where we're getting things ready to go, we were thinking, bacon grease! Bacon makes everything better. Whatever it is, you can then just dissolve it in gasoline or something, pour off the gasoline, and you've got pretty clean gold. And so I'm guessing that's like 80-90% gold right there. And it's a very simple and efficient process. Although I'd be careful not to put your tailings immediately back into the process. But that seemed to work pretty darn well. So my challenge this week is, everyone who wants to has got really fine gold. Try different things. Let me know what works best for you. Chris is going to try some. I'm going to try the bacon grease. I think that is way cool. My next test run, I'm going to use bacon grease.
Yeah,
I'll bet you it works good.
The price at the moment on that metal detector appears to be around $4,000 new, and I'm seeing prices as low as $2,500 used.
Okay, so the Mine Lab currently is it's 4,000 new is what they're selling for, but it looks like around 2,500 used. I'm pretty sure if somebody wants to offer Randy 2,500, you can get it. It's got one of the big giant search coils, standard size search coil. I think it had a smaller oval one, but I'm not sure. But anyhow, it's got the backpack and all that stuff. And
yeah, we are not discussing the election online.
Yeah, Dave, I'm not necessarily disagreeing, but YouTube blocked my channel last time, and I was just doing a simple show and tell of a perfectly legal thing. So let's avoid that discussion on the live stream here. If you want to communicate via email, be happy to discuss it. There's a lot of emotions running there, and let's just avoid it in this forum right now. But yeah. Making the bacon, yeah. Bacon makes everything better. Why not gold recovery? Let's see. I gotta try the bacon grease thing. That is just so freaking hilarious. I love it. I will try it. But
I think we need an email list of people who'd like to discuss things privately.
Well, they can just email me. But anyhow, For those of you who are just tuning in, there's a little noise in the background. I've been told it's not very disturbing, but that's a pressure cooker. We've been canning food the last couple of days here. Eva has a rather specialized diet, low carbohydrate. When we go camping and stuff, we like to have canned meats and things. So we've been making chili, and right now it's meatballs in marinara sauce. So our meals ready to eat are ready to eat. You know, we eat some good stuff.
Says, hi again. Going back to my previous question about your business model, do you find micro miners do gold streams with investors?
I'm not sure what you mean exactly by a gold stream, but micro miners very often do a split of the gold or something like that because there's not a lot of cash necessarily available. They will sell a portion in exchange for capital, things like that. I personally recommend, if at all possible, do not dilute the claim itself. In other words, if you've got somebody that wants to invest and you've got a claim, instead of making them a 50% owner of the claim, form a company, partnership or whatever, and then lease the company the claim. That way, if you really wind up in an intransigent difficulty later on, or the person gets, you know, a meteorite lands on him or something like that, the claim itself is unencumbered.
Well,
and so that's what I prefer doing there.
Out he knows gold sticks to bacon, as evidenced by chunky gold I've lost from contamination while camping and canning in the creek.
Peanut butter. Yeah, that's not bad. That's not a bad idea.
Ahmed says, how about a layman contract? And Agam says, gold stream equals a contractual agreement to sell a portion of a product at a steep discount. Ever seen anything like that? Smoking Jokin's canning sauerkraut. Way to go. Not
so much as an actual contractual thing, but as say on a small scale, especially in the third world countries, you'll have miners that take it to a custom mill that mills it. Boy, my beard really looks weird under this light. I'm really not that dirty, folks. See? But they will often do it for a percentage or something like that. Lots of different arrangements. As a general rule, whatever's the usual in your neck of the woods is the standard that you go by. If it's 50-50 where you're at, it's going to be, you know, if you can get, 55 for you, 45 for them, then you beat the market. But it's pretty much dependent upon what your area does. And then when you look at that and look at your capital cost and decide whether or not you want to try and do it yourself. Very hard to find a good gold mine. Yep. Oh, yeah, that is the problem with peanut butter and bacon grease. So it would attract bears where you're at. Now, what peanut butter really attracts is rodents too. It's great bait for rodents. It sounds to me it's like something like a futures investment, but probably not quite so complex, regulated, etc. Yeah, Cherokee, we like to eat. We like to enjoy our eating, even when we're out in the middle of nowhere. When we were up at Prospect B, yeah, we'd be having chicken with marinara and things like that. We have good food. So that's what we like.
Bacon tomato sandwiches are better than peanut butter, yeah.
Yeah, I'll go with that on the sandwiches. Yeah, royalty model. Yeah, okay. I say royalty, that's very common where somebody gets a percentage of the thing. It's a very common thing because it's it's very hard to say what the value is. Even while you're mining, the ore body can peter out real quick. So quite often a percentage is part of the agreement. Just make sure it's always a percentage of what's called the net smelter return. If you're having it custom milled somewhere, it's whatever the mill gives you for the ore. If you're doing it yourself, it's the actual metal recovered. Don't make it a percentage of profits, because now the accountants can get involved, and I guarantee you a good accountant can make sure nobody makes a profit if they don't want to. They can come up with something to suck up the money. So if you got a percentage of the profits, the other guy can make sure there are no profits, and therefore you get nothing. So make sure it's a percentage of the net smelter return.
Dave says, I'm from Newfoundland. We found a bedrock showing loaded with native copper. No one knows, only us.
Native copper is going to use, especially in Newfoundland, it's probably going to be fairly capital intensive. If you can establish the mineral rights in your name, and get a good area of it, then you can see about leasing that to a bigger company. If it's good specimen grade native copper, then you may be able to micro mine it and still make good money. As a general rule, copper is not the easiest thing to micro mine because of the low cost per pound. I mean, the low value per pound. But if you can get good specimen grade native copper, that might change the dynamics quite a bit.
Chris points out you do have to discount processing penalties.
Well, yeah, that's net smelter return, not gross smelter return. Yep. But I say, if you have native copper, you probably have fairly good grade, and if it's over a fairly good extent, you may have a good sized ore body. But if you don't have a lot of capital to get it permitted and to provide the infrastructure to put it online, which can be north of $1 billion in some cases, then your best bet is to get the mineral rights and then lease it or sell it to a big mining company. Unless, let's say, if you got specimen grade, you could micro mine it yourself and possibly make a good profit.
Chris also points out things like arsenic or carbon in your ore will reduce your return when it's being done in-house.
Yeah.
And Dave says we found a piece of quartz with visible gold assayed at 100 grams per ton in that area.
If you got 100 grams per ton gold, you don't need to worry too much about the copper. That's some good stuff. For those of you who don't know the math, that's about 3 ounces to the ton. So $5,000 per ton. Mining and processing costs should be 100, and that's kind of on the rich side, unless you're really micro mining, and then it may be 500 or something. But I'll be happy to spend $500 to make 5,000 any day of the week as long as it's legal. Yeah, that is some good stuff, Dave. Bird. I guess that's because it's cold up there right now.
Chris Saucier says, I've seen plenty of mine reports that show decent gold as a byproduct when mining copper. That is true. They run together in some places.
Yes, absolutely. That usually, if you're mining copper, you will be getting significant gold and silver. It does add to the economics of the project. Absolutely. It was a hard to trace source, huh? Yeah, but at that grade, it might be worth trying to trace it. Absolutely.
Anybody got any questions?
No, just sudden little pause in the thing. Something will pop up in a second. But if mining copper, how larger is the mine than the ones that I know of? Yeah. In the case of mining copper, there's a number of things to consider. Okay. If you're mining a sulfide ore, like a chalcopyrite or a chalcocite or something like that, then you can theoretically make a concentrate and ship it a substantial distance and still make some money. If it's an oxide ore, you're probably not going to be able to micromine it very well. Down in Arizona, where it's a very little rain, they can leach it pretty effectively. Someplace like Newfoundland, probably way too wet. Don't know what the environmental considerations are, but you need a lot of sulfuric acid and some kind of containment and permitting. Probably going to be difficult for that on a small scale.
Questions.
Okay. Sure. Go ahead and ask, Agam. If you can see it visible, you can probably pick it up with a metal detector. In many cases, yep. You know. We got a property 15 kilometer eastbound float boulders. Did they ever find where the float boulders came from? You had something called an ice pack there at one time that can move them a long, long way. Not only just in-place leach, but also they use geologic containment. They'll stack the oxides in a canyon and leach it and collect the solution as it drains out the bottom there. Part of the negative of in-place leaching is you have very poor percolation compared to if you've blown it up and moved it. So there's a lot slower dissolution rate and a lot less efficiency.
Adon says, are grab samples usually a strong indication? What's your experience? Example, float samples assaying 26 grams per ton of gold.
Okay, so float samples assaying 26 grams. You'd have to look float where? Is it on the side of a hill? It's a fairly small hill. Is it in a water course far from bedrock? If it's in a situation like, as I say, a small hill, then it's pretty easy to track uphill and see if the float came right from there. If it did, oh yeah, I would definitely chase it. If it's in a wash, in a rocky area, hilly area, and the particular rock you're looking at is fairly discernible from the other stuff. For example, just one piece of quartz amongst thousands of pieces of quartz, it's going to be hard to track. But if like every third chunk of quartz in this water course has decent gold, then you can track that uphill until the gold-bearing pieces of quartz disappear. And then you're pretty close and you can start looking up the hillsides from the water course to find out where the quartz came from. 26 grams per ton is always something interesting. The question is, can you track it down to where it came from?
Dave says if they're angular, it's close, and rounded, they're far away. That
is a true situation. The sharper it is, the closer it is. For example, this rock here, see how sharp those edges are? Now this has just been broken and has had no real weathering at all. I mean, I could probably cut myself on something. This is really angular, as they call it. In other words, the edges are real sharp angles. And then as time goes on, as it rolls down the water course, as it's being washed further and further, then all these edges get broken off and rounded.
Like the purplish guy.
Yeah. And see, this rock here is what you might call subangular. You can see it's still angular, but it's got rounded a little bit. But this is still going to be pretty darn close to the source. It hasn't tumbled very far at all. This one, on the other hand, is a little bit more rounded. A little hard to see. I don't know if I got a good example. You want to go grab a rounded cobble from the front yard, little one? So I can show people what it looks like. She's going to go get a rounded landscaping rock. Hi, Lexi. How's it going? it can be impossible to trace the source, Dee Dee, due to glaciation. On the other hand, in the Northwest Territories, they found the richest diamond fields in a long time by tracing it back through glacial deposits.
That's the most rounded thing I could find.
Okay, this is a rounded rock. And you can see this has been tumbled a long way through water. And you would call that rounded, or at least I would. It's not even sub-rounded at this point, although it's close to sub-rounded. See, like this edge right here, see, you can still see where the edge was and where the face was. So that side of it is more of a sub-rounded.
And Spoken Joking wants to know, generally, can you tell from the color of a waste dump on Google Earth if they were after free mill gold? If so, what colors would suggest free mill? Chris says, not really. You might be able to identify copper in dumps, but beyond that, it's not obvious other than iron and copper carbon content.
I would agree with Chris on that.
Chris also says he'd call that rock sub-rounded. It still has facets.
Yeah, a little bit. I told you one side was more sub-rounded and the other one was more rounded, but yeah. The dump question, if it's an area that has, it's a known gold producing area, then you might be able to correlate on Google Earth. But mainly you're going to be looking at iron content. You're never going to be able to see the gold itself. If you can see the gold from satellite, it's called Fort Knox. Okay. But the usual co-mineral would be iron. And so if you see a more iron stained dump, it's more likely to have more gold. But the only way to find out is get on the ground, take some samples. Okay. I'm glad you're having a good time, Agam. That's the whole purpose here, is to just get a bunch of people sitting around their computers, posing questions, giving different answers. Everyone,
Alexi's here.
you know. Oh yeah. So.
And Chris says you can tell more by the size of the dump and any equipment you might have in place still, whether they were after free mill or leaching.
I would say the equipment in place is a more reliable indicator. But even then, if they were shipping, you can't tell. If they were processing in place, they could have been processing more refractory ore. They might have leach tanks in place, even though it was a more refractory ore. But it would give you more of an idea what kind of process. For example, if they have leach tanks, then it wasn't a flotation mill. You can tell that. If you have just a big tailings dump, then you can't necessarily tell for sure, although it's, they might have had tank leaching and have removed the tanks. It tends to get scrapped out.
Keith, with the glaciation process, do you think the angular rocks can get picked up in the ice flow and will not show any rounding features and get deposited far away from the source?
It can happen, but they'll probably get at least some rounding as they're getting picked up and stuff. They can get entrained in the ice and go a long way without hardly any abrasion or grinding. On the other hand, they can be at the site and be ground halfway down through the rock against bedrock.
It also depends on the type of rock.
Yeah, and the hardness of the rock too. If it's a soft rock, it's going to tend to get ground up a whole lot easier than a hard one. But it all depends on where it is in the glacier. Most of them will be up near the bottom because that's where they get the rocks.
Chris says if they have huge piles of ore and cones, it may have been leach on pad, whereas a bunch of fingers is more typical of free mill deposits with more sorted gold-bearing layers.
I haven't seen a whole lot of conical pad leaching stuff. I know what you're talking about, but the people who are doing the heap leaching nowadays, I mean, you can tell it's a leach pad because it's a big, giant leach pad more than exactly how they stacked it. Theoretically, at the end of the project, they're supposed to rinse it, neutralize it, and then recontour it. So that wouldn't become...
Check that up in Central Nevada. Probably.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, as I say, but again, if you got a half a square mile covered by a pile that's relatively thin, yeah, it's probably a leach pad. Absolutely, yeah, especially if it's obviously been done in relatively thin layers. Typically, if you're heap leaching, you're going to do it in like 20-foot layers for percolation reasons. Whereas dumps or whatever's the handy height to dump off of, they can be 500 feet high.
Dave points out they found a conglomerate in Baffin Island, Canada, the same rock as in which waters run basin in Africa. Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. I noticed. I mean, that's how they found the diamonds up in the Northwest Territories. Was a geologist who was doing field work for other companies discovered kimberlite and some diamonds and such, and he just made it his personal thing on his own time to track it down, and it paid off big. He's talking Atlantic. Who just came in here that was from there? Dave Saunders. I think Dave Saunders was in Labrador.
No, he's in Newfoundland. That's pretty darn close.
Yeah, and so that's Atlantic Canada. So Dave, how good's the gold in the Atlantic coast of Canada there in general?
What's the diameter of kimberlite tubes?
I think they vary, but they're generally not real small because a kimberlite eruption, as I understand it, occurs from deep in the mantle. It happened a long time ago. These things don't happen anymore, and so it's not a small eruption. If you look in, South Africa, you see holes in the ground a half mile across. So the ones that are economic are probably generally pretty good size, measured in hundreds of meters. I found some rock, gold and invisible gold and diamonds. I presume it says A diamonds there.
Yeah.
Yeah. In Atlantic region, you got Clarence Stream, which is 30,000.
Chris says it's pretty small in some cases. Check out the Central North America Craton diamond.
Craton.
Craton.
Spelled Craton. I mean, pronounced Craton. Craton is a large area of rock that's been sitting relatively in one piece for a long, long time, typically billions of years. 80,000 tons of gold has been mined in Africa. Wouldn't be surprised. I'd be happy with, I don't know, quarter ton. I'm not, greedy.
Happy with 3 ounces.
3 ounces would pay the bills for 6 months, maybe. Actually, no, it wouldn't. Only a couple of months. 3 ounces.
Once we get rid of the kettle corn.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Chris says you see a circle a few hundred feet across with a clear change in vegetation.
That would seem plausible. I'm not familiar with kimberlite itself. I believe it's kind of a blue clay when it weathers, but it is a rather distinctive material. So once you've been familiarized with it, it's fairly easy to identify, as I understand.
Agon says, can you explain this? Deformed and mineralized contacts lie with granite and younger sediments.
Okay. A contact is where two different rocks come together. Okay. So granite and younger sediment. So you have a granite structure that gets overlain by sedimentary rock. The contact will tend to be a zone of weakness. And let's say the granite is cracked in a couple places and solutions are coming up through it. It can hit the sediment and then spread out underneath it, following that plane of weakness. Deformed means that the shape has been changed over time due to earth movement. And you can see this quite often in road cuts where you'll have, stuff that's, just bent and twisted and stuff like that. So that's what they mean by deformed.
How would this relate with finding gold?
It would depend on the area that you're in. Different areas have different gold depositing processes, and even different processes at different times. So there will tend to be a pattern. For example, certain fault planes, if it's a vertical fault, it does. If it's a horizontal fault, it doesn't, sort of thing, have gold. These are the sort of things that can happen. But the geologists who have looked at these areas before, their job is to find those patterns so that the big mining companies that pay their salary can get use of their predictive ability. They say, okay, I see what's going on. What can I tell, and where should there be more gold?
Chris Spears asked, do you ever find fossils? We don't work in sedimentary rock.
I generally have not found any fossils. I found some a long time ago in San Diego on Point Loma, but no, actually in Balboa Park. It's part of a museum thing. But generally no, because what causes ore deposits is heat and pressure, which tends to destroy the fossils. It takes the sedimentary rocks and turns them into metamorphic rocks and obliterates the fossils in general.
Smoking Jokin says, I found some in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, kimberlite, and I think I found a tube on the magnetic survey. Just having a problem getting permission to check the area. I've been doing some trout fishing.
Yeah, that's always a good way of doing it. But you need to be careful to keep it legal and quiet until you determine what the situation is. Back to Agam. So in every area, try and find out what the pattern was in that area. Quite often there will be what you might call pathfinder minerals, minerals that tend to be deposited at the same time as the gold in that area. And sometimes it'll be like chlorite or barite, or there's different things in different areas, and you can say, if you can find where the geologists have looked over an area carefully, you might be able to say, okay, this is what you're looking for. You're looking for a quartz vein with abundant iron sulfide or iron oxide if it's been oxidized, and some chalcopyrite. If you do that, you're going to find gold in that area. If you don't have the chalcopyrite, you won't.
Chris points out that certain garnets are indicator minerals for kimberlite, which, by the way, apparently looks like somebody dumped a cement truck.
Could be. Not familiar. I would believe Chris. He's a really well-educated fellow. I think he's been more successful in his personal life and hasn't had a bunch of kids and stuff too. So he's had more time to just satisfy his curiosity, which is really cool. I, on the other hand, have been paying bills for many decades, and so I haven't had as much chance to just follow what I want to do. That's why I'm not trying to get a lot of bills right now. I want to try and minimize my costs. Can you repeat that? Okay, Agam, the main things you're generally going to be looking for is quartz and either iron pyrite if it's not oxidized, or iron oxides if it is oxidized. Near surface, it'll generally be weathered and oxidized. The iron oxides are going to look brown to orangish, and they're going to be in specific shapes. They'll be generally cubic. They look like little cubes, or there'll be holes in the rock that look like little cubes, or you can have a whole bunch of what look like there were cubes stacked together, but they're all gone now except for the dividing walls between them. That's called a boxworks. And the reason that is because gold is dissolved. Most of the gold deposits you find are from gold that was dissolved in very, very, very hot water under pressure and then precipitated out. Now, one of the most common reasons for it to precipitate is it gets cooler. If you take real, salty water at high temperature, and it's got all the salt it can handle, and then you cool it, salt's going to crystallize out. Now, three minerals like to crystallize at the same time when the temperature drops. It's at somewhere around 300 degrees centigrade. As it cools off, you get silica, which is quartz. You get iron pyrite, which is iron sulfide, and you get gold. They all will come out of solution for the same reason at the same time. So that's why you look, the two things you can see are the quartz and the iron pyrite, or if it's been sitting near the surface long enough, it'll be turned into iron oxide. And so that's what you're looking for, is quartz with a lot of iron staining, especially if it's got little cubic holes in it and stuff, and iron pyrite or arsenopyrite. Arsenopyrite is a shiny silver pyrite. Any kind of shiny mineral is interesting, because those are, galena is a silvery shiny cube. The tin ores will also, I believe, are shiny silvery cubes. Arsenopyrite, shiny and silver colored.
Smokin says they found a bunch of big garnets up there, and he also found tons of round, clear balls like pea size and smaller. What are they? Well, we'd have to see them, but they might well be quartz, because quartz will often go spherical if it's been in a glaciated area. Yeah,
you can have quartz rounding, or you could have other kinds of nodules like a what do they call that? Not jasper.
Well, Chris says quartz, sapphire, or other metallosilicate.
Yeah, could be. You have to see a little bit more of that to get a better idea. But anyhow, I got them. So that's what you're generally looking for, is rusty quartz will be what you find on the surface in general, or quartz with these shiny, silvery or yellow colored minerals that shatter. They're brittle. They break like glass, although they're a lot tougher than that. If it's yellow and it smashes, that's probably gold. Rare that you'd see one big enough to test that.
Here.
Hey, how's it going? Apache Tears? Yeah, but
aren't they black?
Those are usually black. Obsidian is almost always black. So that's hard to tell. And
Rick Jobling wants to know when we's going to DD's.
I don't know. First, I got to get the damn truck running.
And Patrick Jones wants to know, how often do resources in gold hard rock mining past get missed via test pits by large mining operations?
It's not so much they get missed necessarily, although that's always a case. But if it's too small, they just don't give a damn. It's like if you're driving down the freeway, do you care about that quarter laying on the road? No. These guys are looking for billion-dollar operations, the big mining companies. And if it isn't big enough, they literally don't care. And it would be really nice to befriend the head exploration geologist of a big mining company. You might be able to get a lot of really good tips that way. But they will look for things like that, test it, see if it looks like it's indicative of a larger resource. Watch out, cat. No.
Rick wants to see the rose quartz again.
Okay, hold on a second. Damn cat stepped on something.
And Chris says they do often miss high-grade pockets because of sparse drill patterns.
Yeah, so they're not looking for anything small. They're looking for big stuff.
Move it down a little.
It's pinker than what you see, or at least what I'm seeing on my this monitor here. See if this, and when it reflects, oh, that's a better angle. That gives you a better look at it. That's actually pink. It's a nice, pretty rose quartz, very transparent, but it is shattered, which is undesirable. But deeper in, it might not have near as much shattering. Yeah, it's really pretty stuff. The Forest Service, let's see, opens up the forest to the public.
Chris says,
Yeah.
did you ever hear about the gold nugget the size of a car engine that was found in Grass Valley or Nevada City area back in the 1980s and covered up by the highway department?
No, I've never heard that story, but a gold nugget the size of a car engine would weigh in the neighborhood of a couple of tons. I think 1 cubic foot of gold weighs over 1,000 pounds.
Chris said one of the big guys hit one of those pockets a couple of years back, and it paid for the entire project and bonuses for everyone working at the site. And Smokin says, I know where to get lots of that stuff. I'm assuming he's talking about the rose quartz.
Yeah. When I was working at Goldfields Mesquite, which was a large open pit, low grade heap leach gold operation, one of the drill holes on one of the blast holes hit a pocket that was so rich that they pulled everyone out of the area and brought in a special crew to mine it out, because it was running something on the order of 50 ounces, 100 ounces to the ton. So they mined it all out and sent it off for specialized, highly efficient processing. A gram of gold moved about
3 tons
3
of
tons.
material. Very good for us.
Well, that's an idea here. Why don't we see how much gold I got today? Because I ran 100 kilograms, and I've got a pretty clean gold concentrate showing here. So let's see. Take my brush. I'd say this is at least 50% gold. And I'm guessing I've got about a gram of gold here. That's my thought.
And Rostaman wants to know what's your biggest nugget you found.
Me? That picker I found at Chris's claim. What would you say that thing was, Chris? Maybe 0.02 grams, something like that. It was kind of small, but that's okay. I can live with that. And luckily Chris was there, so he got to see how excited I got with my first picker. Okay, let's see. Little one.
Chris said, I don't know. It was too small for me to have guessed.
Yeah, it was pretty small.
What there?
Can you hold the webcam here so that people can see me weigh this?
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of want it on the scale. Let's see. Where's? Oh yeah, there it is. You can back up a little bit. Give me a little room to work.
No, you can't see the numbers.
That's okay. We can zoom in afterwards.
I mean, the light is wrong to see them at all.
Well, try a different angle. Okay, so I'm going to tear out the scale now. Back up a little one. They can't see a damn thing when it's that close. Okay. And I've got 1.2 grams of material. And I would not be surprised if 1 gram of that was gold. That's some pretty looking stuff. And I will...
Yeah, I had it perfect before you made me move my camera. You can't see the numbers at all. But it does say 1.22.
And I'll just put that there and put it back on the shelf for now. And put that in the bottle later.
Here's your camera back.
So I got that much material. I mean, I got basically a gram of gold. I did That was 100 kilograms.
Rasta Man says he found a 7.5 gram in the UK. And Blaze said, I got some nice nuggets out of 29 Palms Dale area.
Well, 7-gram nugget is a decent sized nugget, and especially from the UK, I'd say that's pretty darn good.
Chris says, I finally got myself a scale that can actually give you milligram range measurements with decent accuracy and precision. Oh, what kind?
So, anyhow, so I got about essentially 1 gram of gold out of 100 kilograms, which is what I would expect. About a third of an ounce to the ton recovered.
Smokin says, I have permission for miles of river in the Upper Peninsula for recreational tanning way out there. I found a seam of quartz with gold next to country rock, but I'm getting old. It's hard to get to. Only canoe.
Only by canoe? Well, that's undesirable.
And Terry Marshall says, the one in my profile picture, which I found, weighed in just over 3 ounces. That was the first nugget one.
Oh.
It's huge.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Your first nugget is a 3 ounce, because after that, it's nowhere but downhill from there.
Rasta Man said, I didn't know there's big gold in the UK until I found it. And
Yeah.
Chris Spears says, what do you think about Chicken Alaska and McGrath, Alaska for nugget hunting with a metal detector? Oh, a lot of good stuff's come out of that area. I know that.
Put a time limit on profits, meaning the investor gets percentage of profits for 30 days on the claim percent. You can use time limits, or you can structure these agreements all kinds of ways. Usually a time limit would be more in the neighborhood of years or 6 to 12 months, something like that, not 30 days, because it just takes a lot longer than that usually to get stuff going. But as I say, I got 1 gram of gold, 100 kilograms. It took me about an hour to run. The system's working pretty smoothly now. The new impact mill is running just routine as heck. I love it.
And Chris made a very good point. Add a trolling motor to the canoe, and Smokin said he has 2 solar panels and a trolling motor. It will go all day.
Yeah.
Or use a float bottom boat with a small gas motor to get up there.
Yeah, I'm thinking flat bottom boat or even a round bottom boat. It depends on exactly what you've got to get through to get to it. But if a canoe can get there, a number of other watercraft probably could too. It may just be that the canoe's what he has. It's hard to tell. This is one of the reasons I'm trying to build really light and portable equipment.
Class 2 whitewater.
Ooh.
Chris says airboat for the win.
Yeah, I don't know. Class 2 whitewater, pretty serious.
Blaze wants to know, how much would you need to find to claim a property?
Legally, enough so that it would lead a prudent man to believe he might be able to turn a profit. In terms of when is it worth claiming, it would depend on the circumstances. But again, if it will fulfill your needs, for example, you might want something where you do more recreational prospecting, but just on a regular basis. That would be totally different than if you want something where you can make enough money to pay the bills. You need to clear 50 or 100 grand a year.
Class 2 is barely able to notice it's whitewater. Hardcore says inflatable pontoon. You can tote gear and a trolling motor.
Inflatable pontoon. Yeah, there's rafts that could take that pretty easily. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think a flat bottom John boat would be a good choice on that.
Rasta Man says, I've not found a big nugget since, but I found a rose gold pocket watch chain weighing 21.5 grams in the same week as the nugget. Good.
But did you find that just visually, or was that with a metal detector, Rastaman?
And Rick Jobling says, good idea. Cut back on the bills, then we all can go to DDs. I agree, Rick. I want to see this outcropping.
Yeah, and a helicopter can do a lot of stuff too. As I'm working on it, okay, I got to get the bagel functional now. Right now, it's just a really big paperweight with brand new tires. Long story, but it's got brand new tires right now and ready to go as soon as we get the engine put together.
Yeah, come May 4th, we'll all converge on DDs.
Yeah, I say, well, I'd love to. You say it's in the general area of Reno. There's some other stuff over there. There's Chris that I could hook up with over there and say hi, maybe hang out at his place for a bit.
Well, I think we should all converge on DDs and figure out how to save this outcropping.
Oh, we'll see. We could have like, what was that? Dan's bake sale.
Adam Sharma says, your opinion, gold and soil anomalies associated with gold, more than 20 parts per billion.
I'm not sure how anomalous that is. The big mining companies do use that to track down large deposits. It's certainly, a useful technique for finding large deposits. Whether it's a useful technique for a small scale miner, not so sure. For that, you're probably more likely to just use really good panning techniques. 20 parts per billion is pretty low concentration, way below economic. But what he's talking about, folks, is that gold is normally very, very low concentration just about everywhere. And so anytime it goes above background level, something's causing it.
Yeah, and Chris says you need to determine what background level is there to compare it to.
Yeah.
Smokin says, by the way, it's a 2-day trip on the river if you're going to stop at all, but he is going back with equipment to get a boatload.
There you go.
Blaze wants to know if anyone prospects Gold Park in 29 Palms.
No, I have not. Somebody else might. So you find out what is a useful anomaly. Again, look at your local geology departments at universities or governments can often have that kind of information to tell you what's interesting and what's not in that particular area.
Chris asks, what do you think about using LiDAR for gold prospecting?
Well, unless it's got spectroscopy attached to it, I'm not sure how useful it would be. It's good for penetrating vegetation. LiDAR is basically a laser radar. It scans and determines the three-dimensional structure of something surface.
Well, Chris says LiDAR is wonderful for getting structure, but most LiDAR systems only shoot a couple of wavelengths.
Yeah, to me it would be, if you're trying to peer through vegetation to see the actual surface, and then you can pick out what you're interested in from the surface contours, it might be pretty useful. Like if there's somewhere on that hill up there in the jungle, there's a mine shaft or an adit with a dump, and it's all completely covered by, triple canopy jungle, then LiDAR might be useful. Aside from that, I don't think too much. I think infrared is more likely to be useful in finding underground workings because of the different temperature air coming from the openings.
Blaze has a hydrothermal alteration map to help direct them.
That could be useful,
And Rasta found his chain in the same pool as the nugget in bedrock hole while snoozing.
Okay, so just captured there. Hydrothermal alteration map to help direct you. I had a thought that just right by the head there. Vegetation. Look for changes in vegetation. That will tell you something about the chemistry of the soil. Where you see sudden changes in vegetation for no obvious reason, it's quite often a change in the rock beneath the soil there that's changing the soil composition.
It can be very useful for doing fine-scale hydrological mapping, which can be used to chase stream samples upstream.
Yeah. What he
points out, it can take big money to find gold mines, hundreds of millions.
Yeah. What Chris was saying there basically is, again, if you have a whole lot of vegetation and you're trying to find a little teeny water course in there, then the LiDAR can, again, you're mapping the surface of the ground, not the tops of the trees. And so you can see what's going on the ground surface, and that can be pretty useful at times. Absolutely. So I'd say it's, the trick is in all these remote viewing sort of things is there something that will just jump out at you? Like, as I was saying, a temperature difference from the air rising from a shaft.
Smokin says you found old riverbeds on LiDAR.
Yeah, you could. You can also, old riverbeds will also tend to show up as magnetic anomalies on a magnetic search because the black sands will disturb the Earth's magnetic field. And that's another way of finding that. It can be helpful if you're looking at a paleo river channel trying to find the gold. If you can see where the black sand concentrations are, that's going to tend to be where the gold is also. So, yes, multiple imaging methods, especially if you have known mines in the area where you can say, okay, this mine, the rock shows up differently here, either the texture, the color, something, and then look for similar textures, colors, or structures somewhere else. Call these what? I don't know. Gold Mine District, would you be willing to look at them? Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll be happy to look at it. I got a guy coming Thursdays. We're going to crush some samples and stuff too. So yeah, people send me pictures. I do what I can. First of all, I'm not the greatest expert in the world. Okay. To use it in terms other people would understand. You can turn off the stove, little one. As a mechanic, I'm an okay parts changer. I'm better than changing oil. But I'm not an engine rebuilder, and I'm sure not an automotive engineer in terms of my skill levels. So in terms of geology, say I'm a hands-on, reasonably skilled person, but when it comes to the really technical stuff, don't have the education and the knowledge base for that, but I'll do what I can. Has anyone ever read Metallurgy of Newfoundland Granites by J. I certainly haven't. That's that sounds like a technical, piece right there, which would be very useful if you were in the area looking for it. Yep. Well, finding black sand will only show you where the black sand is settling. If there's gold of the appropriate size and shape, it'll tend to settle where the black sand does. If not, it won't. United States Treasure Atlas collection. I'm not much into treasure hunting, but I know people who have been. It's quite a fascinating hobby. Idaho, you're in Eloy. Well, that's pretty close to me. Why didn't you stop by? You up there at the truck stop, I presume? Goodness. If you'd have stopped at the Triple T earlier, I could have come over and said hi.
Well, he may be coming the other way. He may be coming this way.
Yeah, we'll see.
In which case, he should stop by and say hi.
Yeah, just pull out the freeway. We're right here. Just don't come down the side road where we're at. That semi will get, there's a tight turn.
If you want, I can put a link to the nugget video in the comments for you to look at. It's a very interesting shape. It looks like a dragon. Sounds cool.
Probably easier to email it to me because going through all of these comments is going to take a while. Let's see. Well, Patrick, I may be much more knowledgeable than you, and I'm a decent man, but I'm not the man. Okay. I just try to do the best I can.
Smoking Joking says, say I crush a softball size sample. How much is good gold? 10 flakes?
It depends on the size of the flake. If you look on my panning videos, Those are essentially 2-cup samples, 2-pound samples, a little bit less than your softball. And you can just look at that and see what roughly 1/3 of an ounce to the ton looks like. Video 99, I believe, hand panning microfine gold, 1999. That'll show you what 1/3 of an ounce to the ton roughly looks like in the pan. And it's a whole lot more than 10 pieces, but they're really, really small. It's hundreds, but they're generally in the size of about 1 to 2 thousandths of an inch. Bacon grease with you. It's a long way to Rick. A big swim. We'll need the canoe and the solar cells. Absolutely.
Dee Dee says, Keith, I found a very unusual rock in an ancient river channel that has stumped everyone, even the head professor of the University of Nevada, Reno. It is bluish gray and has a hardness of 9 and is magnetic.
Hardness of 9 and magnetic?
A meteorite, maybe?
I don't think even a meteorite would be. I mean, 9 is sapphire. I mean, that's right below diamond. I say that's really, really hard.
Yeah, Chris is like blue-gray, 9, magnetic.
Yeah,
Ahmed says rare earth, perhaps?
Nah, not a hardness of 9.
And Chris wants to know, are you familiar with Terry Carter on YouTube? His videos are addictive.
Not at this point. Let's see, Terry Carter. What are his videos about? Back to the really weird rock. You can, if you take it to a proper laboratory, they can tell you what's in it and thereby what it has to be. I mean, there's X-ray spectroscopy. I mean, crystallography. There's all kinds of different chemical analyses that can tell you what it's made out of. It can be determined, but that is really, really weird when you're talking a hardness of 9. That is bizarre.
The email address is, I'm thinking of meteor smoking. And our email address is hardrocku, that is HARDROCKU @outlook.com, everyone.
Even a meteor, I mean, we're talking harder than tempered steel. You know, tempered steel would have like a Rockwell of what, Chris, 60, 70 at the most?
Chris says beryl possibly with some weird oxide layer.
Possibly. I don't know, but I mean, that's extraordinarily hard. I mean, say you're getting into the carbides and things like that.
Says kryptonite and Idaho. Rogers agrees with me. Meteorite pass.
Yeah.
Chris asks, what's the density? Good question.
That's a good question. Kryptonite, possibly, but yeah, seems unlikely.
Kryptonite is green and crystalline, if I remember properly.
And it glows. Meteorite, again, nickel iron, that's not going to be any harder than an alloy steel. We're talking something vastly harder than a knife blade.
Dee Dee says, I did have that at the UNR. The main component is iron, potassium, and potash. Slag, perhaps? Tempered slag?
I don't know.
And Chris wants to know, where did you find it?
Iron, potassium, and potash. Wow. That's possibly not the usually slag. What you'd see to find super hard. I mean, iron on its own is not terribly hard. That's why you alloy it and things like that.
Chris says, was this at an old mill site, lime kiln? I think he's thinking kind of the same thing I am, that it might be some kind of slag.
Some kind of slag, possibly, maybe, yeah.
Chris wants to know, can you tell me where to go hunt for meteorites?
Yeah, they do it around here. The best place is Antarctica, of course, because it's real easy to find them. If you're looking for meteorites, first thing you want is someplace that doesn't have a lot of grass. You know, you don't want ground cover, so you're going to need a desert or something to that effect. In Antarctica, it's essentially a desert. It's an ice desert. And there's areas where the ice tends to upwell and then literally it evaporates over time, leaving anything that fell on the ice on the surface now. If it was in the ice, it's now on the surface of the ice. And it's real easy to see a rock sitting on top of ice. Aside from that, usually deserts are where you would look, again, because of the lack of ground cover. Dinosaur caprolite. Nope.
No mill site, no slag. This rock was at the bottom bedrock of an ancient river channel, was in the sidewall.
Some weird
Lars
stuff.
says dinosaur coprolites?
No, not nearly hard enough. Is garnet potentially magnetic?
A possible option.
I say it's got to be really hard like that. What's the hardness of garnet, little one?
Garnet is pretty darn hard.
I know it's pretty hard, but I don't think it's that. I think it's about a 7 or an 8, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I believe it's a 7.
Let's say
7.5 on the
7.5 exactly. Yeah, it's not a 9. I mean, I think you're talking sapphire. Aluminum oxide is about it.
Yeah, garnet's around 7.5. The ruby matrix is in there too. You're right, Chris.
Yeah.
For meteorites, you're also going to look for that glass effect that happens if you look around in the desert.
Yeah. Well, quite often you find the magnetic meteorite, the iron ones. They're easy to find with a metal detector. But you want to get someplace where people haven't been before, so you're not picking up a bunch of trash. So, I say someplace where there's no human activity for a long period of time, no ground cover, and a metal detector, you might be able to pick up some meteorites. I mean, when we were up there at that mine up here by Wickenburg near the Octave, we found some that with a metal detector, I swear it looked like a tektite. It was exactly the right shape, has the oxide coating, the aerodynamic shape, pings the metal detector. Yep. Yeah, I agree. Trying to figure out the hardness is a little tricky, but you can do scratch tests. I mean, to say it was a 9 would mean that the sapphire had trouble or couldn't scratch it. That would be a lot.
Rastaman says, I've also got a strange looking block of something which I couldn't drill into and looks black but shiny inside. It's square and has bubbles in it and is very heavy.
That could be slag. That could be smelter slag. Everything except the square thing, which could just be from the fracturing, that would be smelter slag. Would fit that. It's going to be very hard, tough, heavy, possibly magnetic, and let's say hard enough that you might not be able to drill it, and it will have bubbles.
Or a clinker from a kiln, Chris points out.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I would suspect there. That doesn't sound too suspicious, but that's not any hardness of 9. That's the one that just, it's like, whoa here. Hardness of 9. Wow. That's a lot. It's hard to describe just how hard that is.
Almost as hard as a diamond.
Yeah. But I say when you start comparing it to other stuff, a knife blade is like soft butter compared to that.
Dee Dee says, Keith, you're right on the hardness with the sapphires, except this is some type of metal, which is why no one can decide what it is from its unusual things.
I don't know. I think it'd be worth finding out, because if it's just made from iron and phosphorus and stuff, that might be an alloy that could be very, very useful.
Density to even guess less than wild arst. Altmed says unobtainium, quite possible.
That may be. Aliens, possibly.
Chris says, okay, if it's metallic, that's much different.
Yeah, again, you can use laser ablation to get a spectroscopic analysis of what it is. Apparently they have some kind of analysis. But if it's that hard and that difficult to identify, maybe crystallographic, X-ray crystallography would be useful, because I don't know of anything that can do that. So if it's, as you say, unobtainium, that might be pretty useful to get a patent on that.
corundum with an iron core is a suggestion Lars had.
Don't know how you get the corundum on the outside.
Chris
but
has got 4
possibly.
metal detectors, lucky man.
Yeah.
And Lexi said, I'd like to say aliens just because aliens sound like a better answer.
Well, it's more cool.
Forrest wants to know any chance of gold being left in a reclaimed leach field.
If it was a gold leach field, not really, no.
David says,
Yeah.
just finished a job using XRF.
And how consistent was it? How well did it work? What were you exactly doing with it, David? Because XRF seems to be pretty good. Lead, okay, that's fine. Because lead is in concentrations where XRF can handle it real well.
Chris says it could be a carbide or oxide layer. Need to determine if that hardness extends to depth.
True.
And David was testing old small arms backstops
Yeah.
for some reason.
Well, because it's a contamination issue.
Chris said nitride, perhaps.
Yeah.
And Dee Dee said trying to scratch with the sapphire was really tough to do, as the sapphire was chipping the sapphire. It definitely breaking into pieces when it defied breaking into pieces when trying to break with a 2-pound hammer. David was at an environmental investigation site.
Yeah, exactly. It's an old firing range and it's got lead contamination. And
Chris
that's
agrees with me. Meteorite is possible here.
it's possible. I don't know. I can't tell you what it is if I have no idea. I certainly can't exclude stuff categorically, but I say that 9, if that's a real number there, and it's the hardness of the mass as opposed to just like Chris was suggesting a surface layer. That's I don't know of anything that can do that, and anything that can do something that nobody knows how to do is theoretically useful for something.
Smokin says the most I've made so far was mining the rifle range by my house when it was down from repairs. I got about a ton of lead in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that can happen.
Agam wants to know, could a meteorite ever have precious metals, or would it be too hot? Oh yeah, they can.
Oh yeah, you can. It's rare. This asteroid they're talking about right now, do you remember which one it was?
I don't remember the name of it, but it's the one worth like $2 quadrillion.
Yeah, and at market prices if you get it here for free. But yeah, some of them do have significant gold, although I would doubt that any meteorite would have sufficient gold to where the gold value would exceed the specimen value of the meteorite, because they're really, wanted. And so little meteorite sells for 10, 40
really
bucks.
Tough rock for sure. I've turned down $5,000 for it.
Yeah.
Well, now we all want to see the $5,000 rock.
Bennu, yeah, that's it, or some such spelling. Yep.
All gold is from space, Smoky House?
Well,
Technically.
all atoms of gold are created in astrophysical processes. They used to say from supernovas, but now they say it's supernovas themselves are really inefficient at producing gold, but neutron star mergers, on the other hand, are much more efficient. It looks a lot the same, but you wind up the same thing. You have a big explosion in space that fuses really heavy atoms together.
Dee
And
says
creates the gold
UNR
atoms.
really wanted to keep it for further testing at the time if I was willing to leave it with them. Lease it to them.
That's not a bad
But they
idea,
must
Dee Dee.
return it.
And make sure you get a contract that says you get a percentage of any commercial exploitation from the information in it. So, getting 1% of a whole new technology could be pretty valuable.
David says I have a meteorite that has a cool geometric pattern.
Now, is that on the exterior, or is that the Windman-Stratton patterns on the inside of the meteor where it's been cut and polished and etched? The Windman-Stratton patterns are very pretty, yes.
Rick says, Struth, Dungo getting all Carl Sagan on me.
Well, I'm sorry, it's from self-defense, because I've got this video. Where does gold come from? And one of the most common things no, it doesn't come from there. It comes from space. And it's like, it comes from supernovas. Well, if you want to go back that far, yeah.
David says the geometric is interior.
Yeah.
And Chris points out to Dee Dee, insist on being present for any testing too.
Yeah, it's not bad. Videotape is not a bad idea either.
Yeah, David says it's cut and polished. Smokin says he read gold areas are where big meteors hit and had gold and it's come up.
No, that's not the prevailing theory at all. The prevailing theory is that the gold came up through hydrothermal solution. Now there's a nickel deposit. The Sudbury nickel deposits are associated with a large meteorite impact many, many years ago. But as far as I understand, the nickel was not from the meteorite itself, but was liberated from deeper in the earth when the very, very deep fracturing and disturbance brought up the nickel-bearing material. But I'm not sure. But I know the Sudbury nickel deposits are associated with an impact event.
And Chris says, well, there's also that small portion of gold made from mercury and lots of energy.
Yeah, you can. But the thing is, you got to make it cheaper than it costs. A cut and polish, yeah. Then it's probably what they call Windman-Stratton patterns. Those are the crystallization patterns of the nickel iron in the meteorite as it was crystallizing when it was part of a really, really big liquid thingy cooling. And so it's similar to the crystals in steel. If you cut and polish steel and then etch it, you'll get the same kind of thing.
He says, I've polished a small part and did the acid test and it showed the pattern of the meteorite.
Possible.
David says, I like the old Native American stories, how they had surface veins of gold. Weird how Native Americans didn't really value the yellow stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't very useful for anything except decoration.
AAA Beverages asks, has the Sudbury nickel ever been contested as thermally pushed to the surface?
I'm really not that familiar with the exact orogenesis model that is currently accepted, but I know that it is associated with the Sudbury impact event.
And Dee Dee says had to use diamond powder to get it to polish.
Yeah, if it was 9, you would.
Chris says that's starting to make some more sense. Have it analyzed for carbide and nitride formations.
Yeah, it could basically be a composite material, essentially, where you have carbides mixed in with other stuff, and it's the carbides that are causing the problem. I mean, it could be very small pieces, in a matrix, and you'll get that kind of surface hardness. Yeah, when it comes to meteorite impacts, when I was going to college, my astronomy class, we, about 10 of us went up to Flagstaff for a meteor cratering symposium from scientists all over the world getting together and talking. And it was fun because it's so fun to see these scientists that have these opposing theories and stuff, and to hear some learned scientist in very nice language, very clear and precise Queen's English, and basically saying, I believe my learned colleague is a bit mistaken in his, basically it's very fancy talk for, I think he's full of shit and I'm right. And it was fun.
I thought carbide nitride was man-made.
It is in general. It doesn't mean it can't be made naturally.
And Agam says, curious to know how many hours you spend looking for deposits in any given day.
Well,
very few at the moment.
That depends on what you consider looking. For example, right now, if somebody is on my live stream and goes, hey, this guy's pretty smart, maybe we could work out something, I'm looking for stuff. There's at least one person I've seen today that we're looking at some things that we might be able to find mutually beneficial. I spend more of my time doing the research on the extraction techniques for a micro scale, because that's usually the hang up. Go ahead, little one.
AltMed says the Aztecs said, thank goodness they didn't know about the value of jade when the Spaniards took the comparatively worthless gold, which is true. I mean,
yep.
And Chris points out R&D is where it's at.
That's entirely possible. The people who always made money in the gold rushes are the people selling the miners' equipment. So I say there's that. It also means if I have the equipment to make something work, then people will come to me and say, hey, I've got something I'd like to work. And can we work out a deal? And then I got to sit there and say, well, is it, a reasonable prospect? And if so, then we can see about working out some. So essentially, I'm prospecting in many cases from my home. And it's been working out reasonably well, at least in terms of doing a lot of traveling, having a good time. And as a general rule, somebody else is paying for it, which is really cool. Otherwise, we couldn't afford it. But by using the consulting fees and such and getting travel expenses paid for, I can afford to do this. Otherwise, I couldn't.
And David says, I'd like to work on a mining project. Rick says, yep, R&D, roster day off, excellent.
Yeah.
Agon says, working from home like a boss.
Trying.
Blaze, do you think another gold rush will happen in the States? In Alaska, if it does.
I would tend to agree with that. The other thing is technologies can create the equivalent of gold rush. Like in the 60s, we had a gold rush. Most people didn't notice it because it wasn't accessible to the ordinary person. But big mining companies started doing something that hadn't been done before, making a whole bunch of gold, open pit heap leaching. Once the technology became refined and widely understood, there was a huge gold rush, but not by individuals, by big companies with billion-dollar budgets.
The current economic situation, yes, I agree that the current economic situation could create the equivalent of a gold rush, because if the price goes up high enough, a lot of stuff that can't be mined now is mineable.
Well, and the other thing is the price of gold. There's been serious speculation over the last decade or two that the price of gold is essentially being held down by big governmental, we're talking international, because there's particular reasons why it's useful for them to have cheaper gold. And it would be not useful to have more expensive gold. If so, and the price of gold were to explode upward, which I think is a possibility, although I can't assign a probability to it. If it were to explode upward, then all of a sudden stuff would become economic that currently isn't economic.
Well, Mike says silver more so, which is true. And David asks, who owns the Argo mine tailings? I heard there's a few million in gold in those tailings. What's the best technique for extracting gold dust?
Well, you don't usually extract gold dust. If it was tailings, then you're probably going to have to, as a general rule, they would say you're going to leach it. If you got millions of tons, then you'd probably set up a leaching operation. It's efficient. It's low cost per ton. It's capital intensive to a certain extent, and it costs a lot of permitting costs.
Chris agrees that silver has even more upside possible, which I absolutely agree with. And Dee Dee says the World Central Banks is doing that. Yep.
It could be. I would not be surprised,
Look
but
at the dead bankers.
I'm not thoroughly conversant on all the details there. I don't think the U.S. dollar, when the average American owes over $500,000 each, if you have a society where every individual in society is deeply in debt to the point where they can never pay it off, how can the society as a whole ever pay it off? And if you look at, tax the rich or whatever, well, the rich don't have near enough money to make it up.
Argon mentioned Klondike silver.
Yeah.
AltMed says in Queen Charlotte Islands, there's miles of black sand high in gold dust, but no one can get it out economically.
Well, Queen Charlotte Islands, if I'm not mistaken, is up there, northern Kazakhstan, Bering Sea, well, not Bering Sea, Arctic Ocean area. So you have logistical nightmare problems there. In terms of how much is in the black sand, I don't know. If you could give me a concentration.
Agam Sharma says Klondike silver. Do you know?
No, I'm not familiar with Klondike silver. But
silver, I think, has more potential than gold.
Yeah.
In terms of profit.
And smoking, joking. Yeah, there's an old saying on Wall Street: if something can't go on forever, it won't. And I think that kind of applies to this, but honestly, it's gone on a lot longer than I thought it would before it collapsed. I used to have a $10 trillion Zimbabwe note that I thought was really cool. I traded it for a large bag of kettle corn. You know, the guy paid for his large bag of kettle corn with $6 trillion.
Blaze
I thought that was pretty cool.
comments, solar panel demand.
To some extent, in certain applications, solar makes sense. In most applications, it only makes sense because of subsidies and tax credits.
Goldman asks, have you ever seen any of the Bill Barley ghost towns and gold trails yet?
No, I have not. Not familiar with it. Sorry. Too busy paying bills and researching in the backyard. Do you know if there are any prospects in the Aleutians? I don't know if what there is. That's Adora getting in the way. I don't know specifically in the Aleutians, but there's a lot of gold in Alaska, and the Aleutians are a pretty big area. So I would guess there are some gold mines in the Aleutians, but I'm not familiar with them.
Smokin says there's a vein of black sands on the south shore of Lake Superior. Anyone can go and run, limit 1 ounce.
Yeah. I'd say there are beach sands in a variety of places.
And Dee Dee says there's a big problem at the end of life for solar panels. Oh, yeah.
Could be. Half an ounce of silver per panel, huh? That I do not know. But yeah, I'd say the whole precious metals thing is so interdependent with so many other things. But I would not be shocked to see gold go to $5,000 or $10,000 an ounce. And if it did, with other things maintaining rough parity with current prices, in other words, it goes to a relative price of $5,000 to $10,000 an ounce compared to now. Yeah, then all of a sudden a lot of stuff becomes quite economical. For example, right now I'm getting about 1 gram an hour working in my backyard on Ryan's ore. Well, at $2,000 an ounce, that's roughly $60 an hour. At $5,000 an ounce, now we're looking at $150 an hour. Well, $60 an hour is okay, but you know, Ryan gets his and this and that and the other. But at $120 an hour to $150 an hour, I'm sure Ryan and I could work something out.
Well,
there's other people too.
Community-based solar can be a good option. Everyone putting their own system on their roof isn't nearly as efficient. And Chris points out that only very high-grade panels, marine, aerospace, military, use significant gold.
That I don't know, but the problem with solar power, as I understand it, is you're dealing with a very low-density energy source. And as such, it takes a lot of equipment per watt to turn that energy into electricity, whereas fossil fuels use less and nuclear uses even less.
Environmentally disastrous.
Eva says they're environmentally disastrous in terms of all the chemicals used to make them.
And the rare earths mining, which is done in countries with no environmental protections and no labor protections.
Yes, exactly.
Agam says, how about on palladium as an environmental metal?
It's used a lot in catalytic converters and such. I don't see any, reduction in that demand happening. I'm not sure how much it's used in industrial catalysts, but the price has gone up and up to where it's on a par with platinum now, I believe. And it used to be like, a fraction of the price. Like a third or a quarter.
There's a lot of gold on the beach sands of Cape Disappointment, Washington, but it's so fine it makes it almost impossible to extract gold from the black sand. It runs 500 and smaller, just barely able to see it.
That's the kind of stuff I'm working on. We'll see how well my stuff works, but that's exactly what I want to be able to do.
Winged says silver to gold ratio is about 80 to 1. Many predict it will be much lower within a year or so.
Could be. Silver's an industrial metal, whereas gold is not so much.
Solar panels are brutal for the environment when China's pumping them out with near zero environmental regulations. Same issue with recycling. Absolutely, Stephen.
Yeah.
Most of that alternative energy is so greenwashed, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
Wind turbines, solar panels, forget it. Nuclear is green energy.
That'll run on a shaker table from Chris. Yeah, that possibly. 500 is getting marginal, but it should work. Yep.
Yeah. Altman says if you can get the dust, it would be worth billions.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
Agam says what gets funded gets built. True.
True.
And Chris says when it comes to solar, the biggest problem right now is we have no life cycle management in place, which is also true.
Well, that's part of it, but you also have market distortions where with tax credits and subsidies and stuff like this, the motivation isn't intense to really make it work efficiently. It's just have something that'll, can be made to work because they give me money. It's like, what was it? Not too long ago, if you bought an electric car, they gave you like a $10,000 subsidy, something like that. Well, someone wants to pay me an extra 10 grand to buy a new car. I might be able to afford one. Not too long ago, I forget how long, about 5 years ago, I believe, in Arizona, they created this law where they wanted to clean up the environment. Now, this is funny. It's a true story. And so the law basically said if you wanted to convert your car to run on propane instead of gasoline, that the government would provide money for the conversion plus a certain incentive bonus. And it didn't require that your car only run on propane after conversion. So what people would do is they would go down to the new car dealership, and here's a car for $15,000. But if they took it to a conversion center and got it converted to propane, they got like a $5,000 rebate on their $15,000 car. And it was a little more complicated, and it could now run on propane, but they weren't required to run it on propane. And this was so badly structured economically. There was so much incentive built into this. Within 6 months, and I am not joking, they had to call an emergency session of the legislature to repeal the law because car conversion subsidies were going to completely consume the entire budget of the state of Arizona. That's how fast it got completely out of control because, well, we just want to encourage people to be green.
Agam says uranium
Crazy.
Mining, anyone? Forrest points out nuclear isn't green either. It leaves bad byproducts for thousands of years. Well, they do have new generations of nuclear reactors that take care of that.
Well, no, what he's talking about the nuclear waste, but Forrest, a large nuclear power plant produces about 1 cubic meter of high-level waste per year, which compare that to this, and these are numbers I got many years ago, back in the 80s, they were analyzed. But at the same time, an equivalent coal-burning power plant produced 500,000 tons of fly ash per year. Now, 1 cubic meter is not that hard to stick in the ground and leave for a couple thousand years safely. It does produce high-level waste. It does have to be done carefully and properly, absolutely. As far as I know, nobody has died from Fukushima, even though we had 2 of them blow up. Or was it 3? I think it was 3 blew up, actually. But to my knowledge, we still have no known fatalities. There will probably be some statistical fatalities from statistically increased cancer rates somewhere.
I think the last survivor of Hiroshima died just a couple of years ago.
There was one guy, he was in Hiroshima when it got bombed, and they evacuated him to Nagasaki. I mean to tell you, talk about bad luck.
Blaze asked about the Stan Myers water-powered car.
I think he's talking about ones where theoretically it breaks the water into hydrogen and oxygen and then recombines them in a combustion cycle, and there's electricity and there's recombination and this and that. And if that's what you're talking about, if somebody could repeal the laws of thermodynamics, somebody would be doing it for a profit, because the payout would be so enormous. Okay, somebody would break the cartel, so to speak. For example, the Israelis would do it, because then they would become the energy leaders of the world. So
Steven says he
it
likes
seems
the
unlikely.
small modular reactors being designed and tested right now. And yes, I agree, Steven. There's a lot that's going on with those small modular reactors that's really interesting. And yeah, winging it, Fukushima still leaking into the Pacific Ocean is kind of a bad idea.
Yeah.
But the Pacific Ocean is really huge.
In terms of the uranium mining, DD, nuclear is a better answer than some. Okay, you're right. There are negatives, but again, I used to work in a uranium mine. I'm still going strong.
And you had 3 children.
And I had 3 children. None of them have extra limbs. The issue is proper regulation and technology brings it into again, back in the 80s, this author was doing, they had studies that were done, and they took, at the time, and again, this is in the 1980s, solar power, oil-powered electrical generation, coal-powered electrical generation, natural gas-powered electric generation, solar-powered energy production. In other words, this was mainly like rooftop solar collectors and stuff. And what did I leave out? Nuclear power. And they wanted the life cycle death per megawatt hour sort of thing. Okay. And this includes the mining, the construction, the operation, and the decommissioning and disposal of waste, the whole 9 yards. And they found that the least dangerous one in terms of deaths per megawatt hour produced was in fact nuclear, because so few people are involved with it. It's so concentrated that even though you do have, for your example, let's assume you're correct, you have a few miners die from that, okay? But you have thousands of people die from the air pollution from coal-fired power plants at the time. Now, they cleaned them up some, but nevertheless, this is in the 80s. But the funny thing was, the greatest number of deaths per megawatt hour was solar powered, because when you have all those solar collectors on tops of houses, somebody's got to go up there and service them about 4 times a year to keep them running efficiently. And when you have that many people climbing that many ladders all the time, you have a certain number of fatalities. And that in and of itself was enough to make it much more dangerous than nuclear power. But you'd have to look at a current analysis of the same thing. But you have to look at life cycle. Everything from obtaining the materials, fabricating everything, running it, decommissioning it, disposing of the waste, and see how it all balances out.
Altman mentions hydro generation, to which I also put in wave generators in the ocean if they can figure out the fouling problems from biomass.
Yeah, fouling. I mean, we used to live on the Puget Sound, and I'll tell you what, it has some really strong currents that are really consistent. You could put turbines there with reversible blades, put them 50 feet under the water surface to keep them away from the ships and everything, and you could really generate a lot of power there on a regular basis. And it's very predictable too. Unlike wind or solar, especially solar up in the Northwest is not very efficient, but wind is not predictable. Solar can be relatively unpredictable also. Tidal generation is absolutely predictable. You know exactly what you're going to get and when you're going to get it. But biofouling was one of the big problems.
Chris says newer solar is a lot better than previous generations, but it's still only good if you're using it to directly power loads on site.
Possibly.
Stephen points out Niagara Falls is pretty predictable too.
Yeah, exactly.
Niagara Falls could really do some generation.
It was kind of a shame. I mean, I understand why and everything, but we were on the Missouri River this summer up in Montana, and we went to Great Falls. And I just recently, within a year, read a book on the the Lewis and Clark expedition and stuff. And so, I mean, we went to Great Falls to look at the Great Falls, and they're kind of like the great little dam there and power generation plant and a little bit of water going over the rocks that used to be the falls.
Well, we've been to Niagara Falls too, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah, Niagara Falls is a lot prettier. But yeah, it's hydropower works very well. It has, of course, its costs. Everything has a cost. Nothing's free. But the one thing they're doing now when it comes to hydropower that's really interesting is they're building a dam up in the mountains that has a certain amount of reservoir, but its primary purpose isn't necessarily to hold back large quantities of water let out later. But from the dam, then they drill a tunnel through the mountains until they're quite a ways below the dam elevation and can generate a lot of pressure to drive turbines. And so with a much smaller reservoir, because you're getting that really high pressure, the stream flow can efficiently drive a turbine because you've got 500, 1,000 feet of head, so just the normal flow of the stream would produce a lot of power, and you need fewer dams to do it because instead of having a number of short drops, you just have one long drop. So you have less environmental impact for the same power generation capacity. And that's kind of an interesting way of doing it. Pump storage is a good way to store energy. Over there in Yuma, where I used to live, we had the Senator's Wash Dam and regulating reservoir. And part of it was power. Mainly it was just water. They would, when the water was abundant, they would pump it into the reservoir there for irrigation purposes and such. And then when they needed it, they could let it out of the reservoir, and the turbines could recover much of the energy that had been used to put it in there. So that was kind of a nice thing.
Yeah, Forrest says a lot has to do with how well power plant is maintained and built, which is true.
The design is critical. Maintenance is important. The newer plants are much more efficient than the older ones. They're much cleaner than the older ones. Now we're using a lot more natural gas, which is both cleaner in terms of total carbon, but also things like sulfur and such, not nearly as much as, say, a coal-fired power plant. So that's a good thing. The United States is the only one of the countries that originally signed the Paris Climate Agreement that I'm aware of that has actually reduced our carbon footprint. And not because we're trying to meet the agreement, it's simply because we've got abundant natural gas now that they figured out how to get.
Agon says selecting what energy source will be dominant is hard, but if you want to safe haven, it's easy. Gold.
For economics, yes, I would agree with that. Another thing that I would suggest is really important for security is mobility. No matter where you are, things can go south. And so the ability to avoid trouble is quite often a lot easier to achieve than the ability to deal with trouble. I really like having the minor bago and stuff when it's operating because, again, I can just go places. We're sitting here in Tucson, and if we don't want to be in Tucson, we can go someplace else pretty easily. Whereas if we had a lot more stuff and less ability to move the critical stuff, then we would be a lot more immobile, and that makes you a sitting target for bad fortune.
Truck camper with a built-in bed and shelf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I say just the ability to move. Like if you're in the southeast
and storage
and a hurricane's coming,
idea.
If you can just get out of Dodge, well, at least you're safe.
Steven says, if you want an interesting case study, look into the Durham York Energy Center. It's the incinerator we have here in Ontario. Keeps garbage out of the landfills, powers home, and recycles metals. Yep. I'm a big fan of that type of conversion.
It's possible. I'd have to look at all the numbers. There's lots of things that look good on paper that aren't, and there's things that are not intuitively obvious that work out quite well.
Well, we need more green stores at landfills and dumps. I mean, New England had green stores.
I'm not critiquing at all. I'm merely saying I'd have to look at the numbers to form an opinion, because a lot of stuff is done for PR purposes. Other stuff is done for economic purposes that works quite well. Another thing, I mean, we have recycling here in Tucson. We have 2 trash cans in front of the house, the recyclables and the not. And guess where most of them go? The landfill. I go to landfill a lot to take trash up, by the truckload and dump it. And you'll see the recycle trucks up there dumping. So, as a trial system where you go and say, look, we don't know if the recycling is going to be economical, but we want to see if we can't figure out how to do it economically, that would make sense. But if it doesn't pencil out, it doesn't pencil out. And, to pay money to recycle when it, 3 times as much to just landfill doesn't make sense, which in some cases we've had to do.
Forrest says our government would never lie us about the environment.
Of course they wouldn't.
Of course not.
The government is the most reliable source of information in the known universe. Just ask them; they'll tell you.
Dee Dee says, Keith and Eva, I'd like to go down to Arizona and metal detect if there's still available places sometime after I get my old truck back and before the temps go into the 100 degrees. Absolutely, Dee Dee.
Yeah, there's places. You might have to join a local prospecting club. But I also have a source. I know a guy down here that might be able to point you to someplace good that's not claimed. It's not my thing. You could also talk to iBreak for Bedrock. They know their stuff when it comes to placer in Arizona.
Yeah, they might take them out somewhere.
They can tell you where there's some stuff.
Chris says trashed energy systems make a lot of sense for end of recyclable life materials. They certainly do. It
in some cases, I'm sure they do. I try not to have a strong opinion on subjects of which I know too little about. I see way too many people whose opinion vastly exceeds their knowledge.
Trash to energy solutions in Scandinavia and some great biomass conversion solutions in Scandinavia.
Little one, can you take over for a minute, please?
Well, I suppose I can take over.
Well, I hope so.
Hi, guys. Hey, everybody. Well, the canning is done for the moment. Well, sort of. It's still sitting in the canner there, but the meatballs are done. Now, for anybody who wants to know, meatballs, the current batch of meatballs is in a nice marinara sauce, and it has pepperoncini and bacon in it. So these are going to be good meatballs. Yep, biomass energy is something I'm a real fan of, Chris, when it comes to forest management. And also, I'm always looking at all that grass that they mow down on the medians of highways. Saw a whole lot of that. Hi, David. We saw a whole lot of that up in Washington State. I mean, the grass up there grew like crazy. I've never tried canning just straight bacon alt mid. We usually keep it in the freezer and then just cook it up and use it in everything. It's really good in chili. Yeah, I have seen that a lot, Dee Dee. I mean, down here, I don't know why we even bother putting it in the recycle bin because it lands in the landfill. Now, I grew up in New England, and in Maine, for instance, you'll see some dumps, some county dumps that have been running for 200 years without getting any bigger because they have green stores. If something is still usable, if something can be repaired, it goes into the green store and anybody can pick it up and take it home. So a lot of stuff that can still be used continues to be used. They also have spring and fall cleaning weeks.
Fresh meatball marinara.
Meatball marinara.
Actually, it's still bubbling in there a little.
Yeah, it's still bubbling. True, Chris, grass is better for composting than pyrolysis, and compost can come in handy. We don't pack freeze-dried food on trips normally, David. We normally bring canned goods with us because Bear built in space in the minor bago where we can store about 3 months worth of canned goods underneath the bed. It's really good that way. But we also have a food dehydrator and we have vacuum sealing. So if we wanted to do that, we could dehydrate all kinds of stuff, which is good.
Have that high protein diet, which doesn't dehydrate as well.
Jerky, Bear, jerky.
Yeah. It's a lot of time to make jerky.
Oh, good for you, smoking a free dehydrator. So dehydrated the whole garden. I personally am a fan of pickles. I love any pickled veggie that you can think of. Pickled broccoli, people. Pickled broccoli is good. Oh no.
Yep.
We lost a canning jar in the pressure canner. That's the first canning jar we've lost in years. I'm devastated. I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but there's like this nationwide shortage going on right now of wide mouth canning jars and lids. It's getting a little bit ridiculous.
Well, at least we'll be able to try the.
And David, yes, we love deer. Bear got a 4-point buck several years ago, and most of it landed in canning jars, and it was delicious. Yeah, Forrest, I am feeling amazing. I mean, I've lost weight. I am mobile. I can rappel now. This is cool. Okay. Yeah, AltMed, down here, the dashboard of a car would make a great dehydrator. It is definitely. And yes, pickled beets, pickled broccoli, pickled garlic, pickled onions, cauliflower, carrots, green beans, pickled green beans. Yeah, David, the coin shortage too. But I grabbed, when I went to Fry's today, I grabbed the last 2 cases of wide mouth canning jars. You can still find regular mouths, but on all the canning jars, the prices have gone up about 40% so far this year, and finding the lids is dang near impossible. The lids, a set of 12 lids, a box of 12 lids now costs almost as much as a case of canning jars if you go on Amazon. It's ridiculous. Mm-hmm.
Yep, worked out pretty good.
I was able to take that off the top of the pile.
And for anybody who eats keto like me, oat fiber and psyllium make great substitutes for breadcrumbs in meatballs. That meatball is delicious. I agree, AltMed. The next virus they make up is going to be worse. Oh, my grandmother used to can fruit leathers, Dee Dee, that were absolutely amazing. She would dehydrate fruit leathers, and she would can pears, she would can apples, all kinds of good stuff. David, I tend to use pint jars for things like pulled barbecued products. Like we're going to be doing some pulled barbecued chicken next week, because you can pack enough for 2 people into a pint jar. I prefer quartz just because Bear has a bear-sized appetite. I mean, I can eat a pint myself and be perfectly fine. Bear needs more food than me. Smoking, I don't reuse lids because my grandmother's ghost would haunt me till the end of time. And no, Chris, I blew on that meatball. The roof of my mouth is fine. Forrest, I tried Walmart online for lids. Their lids, the few they had, were viciously expensive. So it's like absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it is really getting ridiculous. It does not surprise me. For anyone else who's interested in food supply chains and other supply chains right now, at the moment, there is a looming shortage of issues in the powdered milk supply chain and the whey protein supply chain. Not sure exactly where it came from, but it may relate back to the dumping of so much milk during COVID because factories were shut down and we have very few dry milk facilities in this country. Toilet paper and paper towels are now going into short supply again, and that may be a long-term genuine shortage because a lot of places stopped their de-stumping programs and their pulp milling during the COVID thing. And that has also driven up the price of 2x4s. They're ridiculous at the moment. Until those come up to full speed again, there is going to be a genuine toilet paper shortage. This is going to be even worse in Canada probably than here because their de-stumping program provided a large amount of the pulp that went to making TP. So TP and paper towels are going a little weird again. Cat and dog food were low this week in Tucson. Historically low stock levels for all week. Bleach and laundry detergent, they're beginning to get low again. There are problems in the chicken supply chain at the moment. You'll notice that rotisserie chickens are just about at the smallest size they've been in a while, where chicken leg quarters are at the largest size. They come from two different parts of the supply chain. So if you want good chicken right now, buy chicken leg quarters. I mean, chicken leg quarters, chicken breasts, and chicken thighs. Because the roasting chickens, there's a bottleneck in the production. I've noticed turkeys are smaller this year than they are normally at this time, which is kind of interesting. And I have my own theories as to why that happens. But apparently there's also an aluminum can shortage going on right now. I've heard this from several different places that aluminum cans, the production line for aluminum cans for soda, beer, etc., got disrupted by COVID for some bizarre reason, which is why it's hard for me to find my diet soda, which kind of pisses me off. But oh well. Just wait, Forrest. The TP is something that people in the industry have been sounding the alarm on for about 4 months now, and the milk industry is beginning to talk about the powdered milk might be an issue. Ooh, a new fridge. Cool. And yes, I have read that, Dave. I've read The Great Reset. Ooh, smoking a turkey. Good idea. I believe you are probably right, Chris, that it's intentional on the turkeys, the smaller sizes, for a couple of reasons. First of all, demand for large birds is down. Second of all, there are indications that the bird population was deliberately kept low because they started going into the market situation in the middle of this whole COVID mess, and nobody knew whether anybody would be eating Thanksgiving dinners together. So I may not be able to get my final, I may not be able to get a 25-pound bird this year, which kind of stinks because I wanted to can some up. But I will do what I can. About $800, huh? That's actually not a bad price. We are planning this year to get 2 turkeys, hopefully. I'm hoping to get 2 birds. I'm hoping to hit 22 to 25 so that we can eat our way through one during Thanksgiving week and can up the second one. Though I may end up actually canning 2. If I get really lucky, I may can up 2 and eat 1. That would be cool. You want to come over here and take over again, Bear?
Sure, just a second.
Bear is trying to type on my typewriter on my keyboard. That would not be surprising to me at all, Rick. And actually, people don't realize just how few powdered milk processing plants there are in this country. The largest one that I know of is up in Linden, Washington. So, what's the hardest item to can? Anything that is high fat content is going to be extremely problematic to can. So cheese, sauces, etc. Milk is actually not difficult to can as long as you're working with 2% or skim, but even whole milk, if it's coming from a whole scene and it's fully pasteurized, fully homogenized, is not an issue. Basically, what you want to avoid in canning is high fat content, because your canning jar needs to have about 1 inch of headspace on the top. When things are working in the pressure canner, it's going to force upward in that direction. You need that space for the food to be. If you've got a lot of oil or fat in a product, there will be a layer of that on the top of the liquid and on the top of the product. So as the vacuum forms and the liquid and things are sucked up, the oil can get under the seals and make it not seal properly. Smoking jelly can be difficult to can. My grandmother used to make jars of rainbow jelly that were like cherry, orange, lemon, and lime, and she kept the layers proper, and it was black magic. I never figured it out. It's just hopeless, you know. And yes, Chris, if it's going to be high fat, you pretty much need to preserve entirely in fat. Grape taffy. Never tried grape taffy. I have done the same thing. It either comes out as grape rocks or grape taffy. You know, I mean, that's just the way it works. It's kind of half science, half art, with a little black magic thrown in when it comes to making jellies. But here is bareback again.
Yeah, Chris, it's not chili verde, but this is chicken breast chili and hamburger chili. So, be careful. There's glass in there, that not in the bowl though. I was very careful on those. Okay. Okay, go for it. But we do a lot of camping and stuff.
That's the other reason you have to watch out for air bubbles.
And so by canning like this, all I got to do is heat this, and we have really good tasting food at camp. It works very nicely. And it's also emergency supplies. So
Chris,
we
as
like
to
it.
the low acid, that is why you use pressure canning, and that is why you make sure you're using the right pressure and the right time for the right altitude.
Yep. Oh, anyhow, so I say we do it both for security's sake, in terms of, you know, anything happens, we've got quite a bit of food.
How long can you safely keep canned goods? Ball and Kerr both say that properly stored 18 months. My grandmother's rule of thumb was whatever you can on the day you get pregnant is the thing you eat the day you give birth.
That doesn't work well for me.
Not my fault.
You can do it for more years than that. We just had some of that deer. You know that deer, Chris, that we had? Yeah, Eva had some not too long ago. That's well over 2 years. So, yeah.
And Forrest, as to glass breakage, that's the first jar we have broken in about a decade. Very seldom happens around here.
It looks like most of the water boiled out of the pressure canner. And it may have got excessively hot on the bottom there. Because looking in there, there's usually water on the bottom, and I didn't see it. Because we were doing the live stream, Eva likes to keep the jiggler going, and I like to back it off a little bit. and I never got to back it off a little bit, so it used more water than we're used to.
Yeah, Dee Dee says grandmother had home can that was well over 10 years. I've eaten it when it's over 2 years old without difficulty.
Yeah.
With low acid foods like meat, even though I am real careful with food safety, I prefer to eat them in 18 months.
Oh, well. As I say, if there's botulism in there, that probably will be active before 18 months. And if there's nothing in there, it doesn't matter if it's after 18 months.
Forrest, in the truck, we have them in these big boxes that used to hold masonry stone tiles in them, and we have them wrapped in little sleeves of bubble wrap that Bear made for them.
Yep.
And we keep the sleeves.
Yep. So, as I say, that's one of
Lucky
the things
you,
we do.
Aries. Our walnuts are clean out of everything except the pints and half pints in the regular mouth, not wide mouth.
Do you think the world is Sodom or Gomorrah? Well, some of each. Wine to the canned stews, huh?
Chris, in 40 years, I have never gotten food poisoning from anything home canned.
Wine. A wine sauce. That's an interesting concept. I like that idea. I don't know about how Eva likes wine sauces, but I kind of like them. Oh yeah, so we definitely check and make sure that the lids are on tight, that there's a good vacuum. That's an interesting concept, Chris. Never thought of that, but
Ooh, these taste
that would be
good.
nice. Beef with the maybe a burgundy sauce or something.
Oh yeah, Tracy, all American Model 921, best canner ever.
Yeah, Forrest, dry goods are nice, but they won't work for Eva because Eva can't do carbs. If you look at dry goods, they're almost all carbohydrates, your beans, your rice, all of that stuff. And so I have beans and rice. And
Yes, another all-American canner fan.
if we were, in a situation where we were having to stretch stuff, then I would be going to the beans and rice as my primary calories, with this stuff more for nutrition, and save the high protein, low carb stuff for Eva.
Smoking says, I see a lot of Indian land. Is there any claims on Indian land? No. You can't. Sovereign nation.
Absolutely not. Not in the United States of America.
I wouldn't mind having a freeze dryer, Chris, but we do have a food dehydrator, and that'll work if we need it.
Yeah.
Commercial canned foods, I have eaten commercial canned foods up to 8 years old. Commercial canning is an entirely different thing in tin cans, and to some extent even in glass, because different equipment.
Can everyone hear Eva okay where she's at? I just want to make sure that you can hear her clearly. I certainly can, but I don't know how well the mic is picking it up. So, okay, good. So as long as everyone can hear.
Aries points out, they love beans and rice, but my old man doesn't like the ramifications under the blanket. I don't like the ramifications when Bear eats beans and rice either.
Yeah, well, I'll say it's an emergency food. I can buy enough calories in a bag of rice to last for almost a month.
Yeah,
calories.
I 100% do keto. You couldn't pay me to eat carbs anymore.
Yay.
Darn things will kill you.
Yeah, Eva's metabolism is such that carbohydrates are anything over 20 grams a day actually starts causing significant health issues with her. It's inflammatory to her. So,
Winging it, I have not seen an all-American solar oven yet. We have a regular electric food dehydrator, and I keep trying to get Bear to build me a biltong box or a solar dehydrator.
Okay, Forrest, it says, can you get permission to prospect on Indian lands from the tribe? I have never heard of it. Certainly the government has, they've negotiated with the tribal governments have given permission to large companies to mine on their land. I presume for significant chunk of change and hire all Indians or something like that. But you'd have to check with the individual tribes and see. Also, in a case like that, a lot of times if you were partnering up in some way with a tribal member, you might be able to work a deal that would be functional, where the tribal member was the person actually doing it and you were just helping them, so to speak. Yeah, if you have any inflammatory disease like arthritis or whatever, then drastically cutting the carbs may in fact cause a substantial improvement. Eve is the expert, not me, but I mean, that's the basic thing, is that carbohydrates tend to be inflammatory. With some people, it's much worse than others. If you reduce the carbs, you will probably reduce inflammation. And in some cases, it's quite life-changing. In Eva's case, it was life-changing. So.
Yeah, I got my T2D.
Wow, Aries.
Fixed perfectly too.
Yeah. I say that's one of those things. It's important to find how your body works and what's important to it. You know.
Carbs are not important to anybody's body. You don't need to eat them. They aren't. They're the only macro that is not in any way dietary dependent because they're so critical. You can make all you need.
Yeah, I like carbs too. I mean, I like bread. I'm not so much into the sweets. I miss my fresh baked bread. By the way, up north in Montana, Franz makes a keto bread that actually tastes pretty much like bread, but it has like 0 carbs. It was 0 carb, wasn't it, little one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a 0 carb bread. It can make you a little gassy if you eat a lot of it.
Pure fiber.
But
Fiber and protein.
It's pure fiber and protein, and it tastes like bread, you know. Let's see. You need folic acids and vitamin.
Yeah, and you can get vitamin C from meat depending on what you eat.
Yeah, it's also important to eat a balanced diet, whatever kind of diet you're eating. So you need to know what you're doing. Eva spends a lot of time understanding exactly what's going into her body because to her it's very important. She keeps track of me too. I figure, what the heck? Can free mill gold run with extraction in the same mine? I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about. I think there's a word or two missing, smoking, joking. You can have free milling gold along with refractory gold in the same mine, absolutely. You can have free milling gold in the sulfide ore where you can get a certain amount of the gold out free milling and then you have to deal with the sulfides otherwise. Or you can roast the sulfides and turn it into free milling. You just have to look at the particular ore and analyze what works with it. You know? I found out if you get hungry enough, you'll eat anything. Well, our friend...
As I told Forrest, totally true, but I'd be as miserable as I was the last time you saw me.
Yeah, our friend Gonzo says, I'll eat anything dead or moving slowly. Yeah. Yep. And if anyone has any questions about keto, Eva is really knowledgeable on this stuff. She does research not on books, she does it on the research studies. So she really is knowledgeable on these things. So if you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask her. Yeah. I don't think I'm positive.
Aries, my coworkers move slowly, but I won't touch that meat. Nah. I told Bear, My philosophy is I don't shoot anything I won't eat. And I wouldn't eat most of the two-legged creatures around here. That's for darn sure.
Yeah. A solar oven for baking works fine down here. I mean, in the summertime. Oh, yeah.
Maybe you might want to look into biltong boxes if you get a lot of wind. Because biltong boxes work really well where you can use wind and the heat.
Funny how this mining forum turned into a cooking show. Whatever works, man. I like to think of this just a bunch of friends getting together and shooting the breeze. You know, somebody will have a serious question, but aside from that, it's just whatever people want to talk about. I enjoy it. Yeah, I enjoy just the yakking, you know. But it's fun. Having a good time. I love all you, I say, the community here. Well, thank you, Old Med. 3 years ago, huh? And I haven't bored you to death yet, huh? Notice I'm getting all my questions answered. It's great. Yep. Oh, I love to yak. And we got other people here. Thank you, Aries. Oh, I've had a few problems with the truck from time to time. As I say, it's an old truck, and you're going to. Trying to find, just listen and learn more about panning and finding gold while camping. Well, I like getting out in reality, you know, nature, so to speak. I like kind of getting away from the city and people, and I can relax better out there and just try and understand what the rock is trying to tell me and how to learn how to cooperate with it in a profitable manner.
Oh, cool, Lexi. Massage is cool. Do you do feet?
You want to get out and pan. I presume that means, David, that you want to get out and do placer. It can be nice. I like hard rock. I like exploring it. I don't know why, just my thing. That was a long time ago about the sidearm, Aries. Yeah, you have been around since the beginning. It's a little better down there now, I think, but still, it's not the safest place to be. You know. Have you been around Laughlin? Went through there earlier this summer. My daughter lives in Las Vegas now. So we went through Wickenburg and Las Vegas and then came back up through Salt Lake.
Rick says, so when you coming to Oz?
I don't know, but I know this. I don't have the money right now.
Well, come to Oz when you get rid of Huntsman spiders. How's that?
She's not a fan of spiders.
And Forrest says we need to do a bumper-to-bumper video on the miner bagel, which I agree with.
Okay. I tell you another thing on the miner bagel that I really like. I put two little auxiliary lights on the front bumper aimed sharply down. And so when I'm driving along the road at night, I can see the lines on the sides of the road and everything. It's not a problem. They're angled so
in Vegas.
They're angled so sharply that it doesn't bother the other drivers. But it really is nice. And also I've got a bunch of lights around the camper If I turn all of those on at night, I can maneuver off road, back up and things like that, and I can see just fine. It worked out really, really well.
Smokin says, my spot is where the Canadian Shield hit the mid-Atlantic plate. It's a jungle of different kinds of bedrock, all kinds. So small and remote, I think the big guys don't bother. Well, that's good.
Yeah, Rick, I'm not a big city fan either.
It's in Vegas. Aries says, we go to Deming looking for specimens in the Trace Aramis, but really close to Columbus. A little sketchy there. Yeah.
I don't know if we're a dying nation, Dave, but we are sick. That's for sure. And we need to get our act together.
We need to get more inclined toward paying attention to the bigger picture, so to speak, in the spiritual sense.
Yeah. I've seen Zick, Nick. Yeah. Now, Dave, come on. Be nice. And, okay, winging it. I found out a long time ago why the smoke from the campfire always blows in your face. Because no matter where you're sitting, a gentle breeze creates a vacuum on the lee side of your body, and that will suck in the smoke. So that's why it seems to follow you around the campfire. It actually does. Yeah.
Now, Rick Jobling is trying to claim the huntsmen are okay, and it's the trapdoors that are a problem. Well, the trapdoors are a problem for poisoning you. However, every spider in the entire world is bent on assassinating me, and I know this. You cannot convince me otherwise. I don't want a spider that is bigger than my cat anywhere near me.
Forrest, I don't like working on trucks. It's a necessity, not a pleasure. Hello, Corey.
Hey, Keith, smoke following you is the same principle of wearing a face mask and face shield. Yeah, probably.
Somebody did a great demonstration. Just take your vape thing and inhale, put your mask on, exhale, see how well it works.
I could do that right now.
Hey, there you go. Show and tell. Oh, wait a minute. If the live stream stops, folks, it's not me. Okay? So Eva's going to demonstrate the efficacy of face masks here. So first she has to get her standard issue reusable face mask that's not properly sterilized between uses, and you touch it, and then you touch the doorknob, and then you touch your face again on the way out. Really, really great idea here.
Okay. And by the way, this is thicker than the ones that Hanes are selling in the 5-packs. This is my face mask. Basic black, classic. Oh, all the way up in my glasses and in front of me. Yeah, not fun. Okay.
I feel protected. The face petri dish, yeah. Yeah.
David, it supposedly is CDC approved.
Somebody called him a chin bra the other day. I thought that was pretty funny. Well, the engine itself, the block is okay. We're just changing the pistons and the rod bearings. And of course, all the gaskets and stuff. But the heads, the cylinder bores, everything seems to be in good shape, except, as I say,
Aries,
as soon as it started making noise, I shut her down.
Aries, if I still owned bras, one would definitely work better than that mask because mine had a lot of padding.
Yeah.
But I don't bother anymore. Pointless.
Yeah, Jim is helping me put the engine back together again. But we're just waiting for the pistons to be installed on the rods, and then we'll start. First day off, Jim and I will get together and start reassembling things. It's just going to be a pain in the ass.
Well, smoking, I'm pretty sure that really effective masks really work. I highly doubt that the 5-pack that Hanes is selling at Walmart is a really effective mask. That's, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think
proper equipment will do the job. Yeah. And hand sanitation too. You know, you touch your mask, you should now sanitize your hands. You touch the doorknob, you should sanitize your hands. People don't do it. So the piston needs a bra? No, the piston needs a scrapyard. Did you see that the other day? I mean, one of them was pretty tragic. The other one that had the top ring groove broke through to the piston face, and another one had a broken ring. So we had 3 piston failures of one sort or another out of 8. It's time to go to new pistons and lower the compression.
Smokey points out the whole world is a BSL lab now. Well, yeah. The way I see it is we always have new things showing up. Now, I do not believe this new thing was entirely natural, but it has shown up.
I think not just to see who's obedient, but to condition us to be obedient. Yeah. No change room. Yeah. Did you bore gauge to check bore taper? No, we did not. You can still see the original machining marks on the bore from the last rebuild. I was thinking of using a glaze breaker on them, but Jim said, no, they don't need it. They're not glazed yet. So we'll take the new pistons without rings and make sure they slide properly in and out.
Aries,
We
the
may have
last
to-
time I tried to discipline my touching, I still touched 11 things before I hand sanitized.
Yeah.
Just going store to car. So, you know.
Yeah, I say it's the bores are in pretty good shape. There's a couple scratches from the broken rings, but not too bad. Yeah. Just run some solvent and Scotch-Brite down them. Yeah.
Forrest, they tell people to put their masks up between drags on cigarettes in casinos in Nevada. No joke. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this whole thing is
Well,
we live in
Aries,
an interesting year.
that was when I was using hand discipline and paying attention to not touching anything, and I still screwed up 11 times. Bear is constantly touching his face and his hair and everything else while he's just sitting.
Yep. Absolutely. I'm always touching my face. You guys see it, I'm sure, a lot.
Chris says, I'm surprised they don't have masks with stomas for their cigs. Yeah.
Pavement breaker. God, sounds familiar. I'm not sure what you're talking about, DD.
It's one of them widget gizmos for breaking sidewalks, I believe.
Just a second. Let me. Essentially a jackhammer is what they're
Yeah,
talking
it looks
about
like
here.
this. It looks like this, Bear. Like a little pneumatic widget gizmo.
Yeah, I've used, hydraulic hammers. I've used jackleg drills too, although not
Wow.
very much.
You can buy one for $1,000. That's interesting.
I agree with you, Forrest. It doesn't matter how long you live; it's what you do while you live.
Dum vivimos, vivamos.
Yeah, it's
While
a
we
tool, a
live,
sliding
let
steel
us
ram
live.
inside a pipe and a removable chisel. Yeah, it sounds essentially what we used to call a jackhammer. I believe that's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just showed you a picture of one.
Yeah. Oh, that's one thing I like about what I'm doing right now is I get to, do interesting stuff all the time.
Winging it says ball hone would be fine. Make sure you cast rings. Chrome molly rings will never see.
Say what? Where?
Ball hone would be fine. Make sure you cast rings. Chrome molly rings will never seat.
Okay, I think it means use cast rings.
Yes.
Yeah. you can't rent a ball hone, but you can rent a 3-stone hone. And again, for glaze breaking, you don't need a heck of a lot.
Corey says, is peridotite another gold sign in the areas where gold is known to be? I know it has iron content, but I don't know if it's too new or old or not at all connected.
I don't know of any connection between the two. I don't know that there isn't. I'm simply unknowledgeable.
Hey, Chris, what do we know about peridotite? Serpentine is often associated.
Really? Okay, because in Oregon there's a lot of serpentine.
Forrest says he may head down to our area. It's 22 degrees where he is at the moment.
Yeah, you're welcome, Forrest. Love to see you. Yeah, say if you want to come down here, that'd be great. Weather's pretty nice in the winter usually. Try and avoid March. That's kind of the rainy season. You will get rain other times, but in March sometimes it can come down kind of consistently if we get in one of those patterns. Am I going to be mining this winter? I certainly hope so. I'm certainly going to be busy this winter. I've got a couple people want me to look at things. Ryan would like me to come out and look at his mine, get a little more, instead of just the dumps, to actually look at the mine itself and see what we can figure out there. I mean, the dumps are running 1/3 to 1/2 ounce to the ton. I'd like to see the bedrock it came out of. And if not that, there's other stuff. But yes, I do intend to keep busy with the gold mining this winter. And there should be a number of, I'm trying to do 1 video a week, although sometimes it'll just be on extraction equipment and stuff like that, because that's what I'm doing that week or whatever. Any place to use a dry wash and camp out? If you don't mind paying a little bit to become a member of a prospecting club, yeah, there's lots of places down here. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff here. And Dee, I presume you're talking about an air operated one. And yeah, they work a lot better. Or yeah, Dee, sorry.
Yep.
Doing a fine study. I'm doing whatever gets thrown at me, basically. I mean, whatever I can stay busy paying the bills doing is what I'm going to be doing, because I need to pay the bills and I want to gold mine. So whatever I can do that way, it depends on circumstances. Under certain circumstances, I may wind up at a particular project and just be banging it there for the rest of the winter. I don't know.
Aries wants to know what you think of the handheld grinders, the portable ones.
By that, you mean the impact mills that you put on a little handheld grinder, like a Cobra crusher? Is that what you're talking about, Aries?
And Dee says no, theirs doesn't use air, it's hand operated only. That would probably be pretty good on
Okay, so I'm thinking more like a slide hammer. Is that what you're talking about, Dee? Okay, Cobra crusher. Throughput sucks. It's, in my opinion, it'd be very helpful for field testing, where you're trying to grind up some rock in a small sample size to do some quick hand panning or something. That would make perfect sense to me for a Cobra crusher or equivalent. In terms of actual production, there's just no throughput. I mean, say my crusher is making me pretty happy right now, my impact mill. And it's easily running 200 pounds an hour right now. If I'm babysitting it and throwing it as fast as I can, I get about 300 pounds an hour. 200 pounds an hour is a piece of cake. And it pretty much feeds itself through the vibration running the bucket. So for production, you want something at least that big. But a little hand impact grinder like that, it's only good for sampling, in my opinion. Nothing has the throughput that you're going to hold in your hand for any kind of production. If you had rock that was rich enough that you could actually make money with that, you'd want a bigger one anyway. Trust me.
Rich says he'd like one of them on-the-spot videos of the Vago updates. Absolutely.
Okay.
He says it's a slide hammer with removable chisels. It uses 11/8 in hex shaft.
Okay. Then I know what you're talking about. It could be useful. As on the other hand, I'm not dealing with water, and so I'll usually go with the electric demolition hammer, unless I'm in a situation where I can't get it in there too well and I'm doing sampling, in which case then I'll be doing usually hammer and chiseling. There's times we're just trying to manipulate a hammer and chisel. It's tough enough hanging from a rope.
Know, is peridot olivine in the very weird asbestos material family too? Serpentine, nephrite, jadeite, brainpardite, because suddenly examples are just not coming to me now that I need them. I do not believe it's in the same family as
I think it's a little bit different, but I'm not sure. Stay away from any Russian grinders. They're junk and hard to get parts, says Forrest. Tried them this summer. There you go. There's the answer. That's what I like about a community. Somebody usually knows the answer. Aries, one thing I found is that when you're doing sampling, if you just take a good size sample, like a half a bucket, and then screen it, you can usually get a good idea panning the screenings without having to actually pulverize the rock. It seems to be a much easier way to get material for a quick hand pan. And that last video I did with I Break for Bedrock, I mean, the pre-industrial hammer mill, just smash the rock with a hammer. In the trench, if you can do that, that'll get you enough fines to do the job.
William, it says he made a big slide hammer that fits in the receiver on the Jeep for sampling.
Okay.
Altmed says, this week I saw an Aussie prospector channel, and for fine recovery, he said it made a big difference if you pre-mix the rock flour with water and pre-soak with detergent before the wash plant. It
can certainly happen. Okay. The floating of gold is a problem in many recoveries. I may be having it in mind. I got to see what the slimes are doing, etc. There's other ways of dealing with it that are sometimes adequate, like put a wiper on top of the water, which forces anything floating to get a little under the water to get past. Just a piece of rubber on top.
Know if you have a subscription to Minecast.
No, I do not. I think I know what you're talking about. It would be kind of nice, but I don't have one at this point.
And Aries says, I found samples with tiny amounts of visible gold. So would it be a good idea to also take soil around the rock as well to sample?
Yes, but it's not going to tell you what's in the rock. It's going to tell you what's in the soil. But it's entirely possible the soil is an excellent grade too, because the lighter rock particles that weather away will tend to disappear a lot faster than the gold will, and you tend to get what's known as a residual placer or surface enrichment, and that can be just fine. But yeah, take them separate. Make sure you get a good clean bedrock sample. Take a little bit of the rock off first, and then sample the rock under that surface to make sure you're not getting a contamination from the surface soil.
Says, I use a 20-pound fence post nail and a railroad tie plate. It's so heavy I just roll and slide it. Yeah, that'll work.
Never addressed. Set up a GoFundMe so you can go out to the. Well, I've got a Patreon.
Yeah, but we need a GoFundMe so we can all, as a group, converge upon DDs.
Maybe. I'm not the electron herder.
Dee Dee says they use it all the time to see where the active and closed mining claims are. I think it's better than the BLM 2000 report. Yeah, a lot of things are better than the BLM 2000. LR 2000
Yeah, the LR 2000 sucks. That's a horrible program.
Dee Dee, I wouldn't laugh. We're all going to show up one of these days.
What's the cost to subscribe to Mindcache? I don't believe that's a free service, if I'm not mistaken.
Chris points out Mindcache isn't updated, so you must check the LR 2000.
Okay.
Well, I always would double check anyway. I do that with any kind of data like this. It's not just mining, but nutrition data, etc., because you never know when somebody's going to update. But the LR 2000 is ridiculous to use sometimes.
Need a drink.
Smoking says you have to crack the code to file a claim in Nevada. Yeah, you have to do that just about everywhere.
Yeah, that's it. That LR 2000 is a typical government job, completely useless.
I will
in most
say
cases.
the new USDA database was a good update. It's actually somewhat, kind of, sort of user friendly.
How did they screw that up?
What, the USDA database? Dang near impossible to search. You have to know. You need to know military. You need to know military nomenclature to search that database.
Well, the other thing you can do on the LR, once you get stuff on the LR 2000, you can then go to the county recorder's website, and something like in Pima County, it's digitized, and because the LR 2000 will have the book and page of the recordation, then you can look that up, and that will have your map on it and everything.
Oh, and Rick says when we finally all get to Dee Dee's, we have to have a big barbecue and possibly some sea shanties around the campfire. Hey, we need cowboy poetry. We're from the West here.
Was that Dave's Bake Sale? Dan's Bake Sale? What was that on Rush? Some guy years ago, it was like Dan or something like that, called up Rush Limbaugh's show and wanted to get a free subscription to the Rush Limbaugh letter. And Rush said, hey, we're all about capitalism here. That's not the way you do it. He says, do a fundraiser or something. And then like the next day, some chef calls and says, hell, have a bake sale. And so this chef called up the next day and said, hey, Rush, I'll donate stuff to that. By the time it was all over, they had like 20,000 people in Fort Collins, Colorado.
Winging It points out that USGS has publicly stated the world's silver supply will be depleted by 2025. This will make silver the first widely used industrial commodity to have the in-ground supply exhausted.
Well, the question, Winging It, is that this is probably proven reserves. And 2025 is a pretty short time frame. But proven reserves are never infinite because it takes money to prove up a reserve. That's why we've always, for the last century, we've had 15 years of proven oil reserves, because the oil companies don't spend money to prove up a reserve more than 15 years in the future. As long as they got 15 years, they can plan as far as they need to. Their horizon is complete. And so that's why the years of reserves stays rock steady decade after decade after decade.
So,
but it would typically be more than 5 years. So you may be accurate on that one. I'm not sure.
Back to the issue of conversion on Dee Dee's.
Uh-huh.
Smoking Joking can play I picked up a hammer on his fiddle. Dee Dee says they ain't much of a cook, so you and I will be doing the cooking here. I am sure. And yeah, the price of silver, I believe, is actually slightly artificially low now, along with the price of gold. Nothing to do with how much is still left in the ground, everything to do with banks and dead bankers.
Yeah.
Oh, you'll be out of lockup by next May, I'm sure, Rick. I mean, it's not like they can keep you locked up forever, right? I mean, your government is perfectly reliable, just as is ours.
Yeah. I don't understand why they think they can shut down the economy forever and it's not going to redound to their detriment in the long run. Collapsing countries are not fun to try and run. And populations that have been impoverished and destituted by their governments are generally not kind and generous to those government employees. I really don't understand this.
Yeah,
You know?
we all know, of course, they don't want us locked up there. We're going to be wide open now that COVID has officially disappeared.
Don't worry, Biden is going to come up with a vaccination almost any day now, like Trump said. And then we'll all be happy.
What is silver actually used for now since the film industry switched to digital film format? Well, it's
a lot of electronics.
A lot in computer parts.
Yeah, a lot of wires and computer parts and stuff like that. Aside from that, I'm not sure. There's probably some platings and things
Silver
like that.
nitrate is still a thing. It has a lot of medical uses.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure Chris knows.
Yeah, Chris can probably tell us.
That's one of those esoterica that he's probably got on his fingertips here.
Yeah, silver's used for a lot, actually.
Mm-hmm. You'll not be able to watch it. I presume that's wires and such in the electronics. I presume that's kind of the cheap replacement for gold in many things.
Mostly electronics and electrical systems, as it is the most conductive metal available.
There you go. Yeah, you guys are a lot closer to China than we are. So it's more important to you guys in ways. I'm not sure what the situation's going on over there, because the Chinese are so totally dependent on foreign trade, and shutting down all these economies is going to shut down the foreign trade. So it may crush China inadvertently or incidentally. I'd be shaking in my boots if I were China. India's talking tough too now for some reason. They're telling, there's a YouTube channel called TFI Global, and I mean they're talking tough. It's like, if China wants to try and invade, we will destroy them.
Serious Indian propaganda. It's fascinating.
I suspect the Indian government has a lot to do with that channel, but that gives you an idea what the Indian government is wanting people to think and what they're trying to project. So that's interesting. So I don't know. I'd be nervous if I was you guys. Of course, I'm just a nervous Nelly. That's me.
I agree.
I agree. Winging
Silver
it
is far more prevalent around than gold.
Yeah, I mean it's much more functional. Gold has a few functions where it's hard to replace it, but in most cases it's either a monetary or an aesthetic thing.
Well, it's a matter of scale, Dee, when it comes to that much silver being used, because actually the film industry didn't take up as much silver as people thought it did. Outside of, consumer film used a lot more than commercial film does.
What, Cat?
But, I mean, off the top of my head, I can think of all kinds of things in this house that have silver as a component. And this is not even a smart house. The Adobe Hovel is condemnable.
Yeah, I agree, Forrest. I think China might have painted themselves into a corner on this one. This is interesting. So we shall see.
Chris,
we shall
all
see.
my electrical contacts are pretty much gold.
Let's see. I got to be up at 6 o'clock in the morning here. I got to get to bed in another hour. Set my alarm for I forget. What do we do here?
Man, I can't believe we lost a jar. I'm so bummed.
It's just a jar.
But the meatballs were good.
Yeah, they were. And we at least got to try them.
I knew the meatballs would be good.
I know. It was pretty good. I mean, you're a pretty good cook. I'm a pretty good cook. Between the two of us, it's usually fairly edible. Ah, there's that damn DJT guy. I gotta be careful what I say. Hitting me up for money again.
Altmed says they're selling McMansion cardboard boxes for $1 million in the new subdivision. They won't last 25 years. Yeah,
Oh yeah.
disposable housing is a big thing now.
And where is that, AltMed? Up there in British Columbia? Yeah, Dee Dee, you might be able to replace the silver with copper. I'm not sure why the silver is so critical, or whether it's just better. You know, Vancouver Island. That's what I thought.
Vancouver Island,
Nanaimo.
Nanaimo.
Well, and cardboard doesn't last too well in the rain. Little one, Nanaimo is wetter than where we used to be.
And Steven says, same thing here in Ontario. Barely built to code, but built like crap. Smoking says, uh-oh, cut off. Was someone a bad boy? Probably.
No, not that I know of.
You used the dreaded initials.
You might be right, Chris. I really don't know. Of course, if the price goes up high enough, the scrap sources will increase dramatically too, and recycling will become more ubiquitous.
Forrest says, I can cook as long as I got a can opener.
Yeah, well, you saw us, Forrest. I like to eat. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Forrest and was at a campground with Eva and I about 2 years ago, and we were there for about 2 weeks. And Forrest kept a good eye on Eva when I was dredging. He was dredging right next to the camp there, and I really appreciate. It made me feel real comfortable. I could leave her there in her condition, and if she needed anything, there would be someone to take care of her. So I can't say enough how much I appreciated what Forrest did there.
He's got a lid popper to open jars too. Well, that comes in handy.
Yeah.
E-waste recycling will become a big industry. I agree.
Yeah, I say that if the price goes up, it sure will. Yeah, Ken, he'll be making money.
Well, I would do e-recycling down here if I had a way to do it.
Yeah, I remember when the Hunt brothers tried to corner the silver market, and it cornered them instead. Be careful what happens when you chase the tiger. You have to have a plan when you catch it.
You got to think about getting ready for bed, Bear.
Yeah, I got to be in bed in about an hour. You know how long it takes me to get to sleep? 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And that would give me 8 hours sleep. I quite often only get 5 or 6 hours sleep. I wake up, I can't get back to sleep
Ringing
again.
It says, yeah, mining landfills. Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I saw an article very recently about how much stuff is in your average large city landfill and how valuable they would be if you applied the appropriate recycling technology.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, there's a lot of combustible organics there, a lot of trash. In Tucson, there's a lot of what you would call green waste that gets thrown in the landfill. On the residential side of the thing, as opposed to big garbage trucks, I'd say at least half of all of the people dumping stuff off are landscapers, essentially.
Forrest says, you probably remember the Wright brothers. Pretty darn close.
Oh, man. What's that stabbing feeling right there in my back? Oh, man. Could you pull that out, little one? It's probably got Forrest's name on it. Yeah.
Yeah, ouch.
Hey, I'm still kicking. That's right. That's right. To some extent, they do that also, although in Arizona, there's so little moisture that the bacteria really can't digest things too well. So I'm not sure how much that would work.
Well, the pipes go up in our landfill for outgassing, but that gas is not captured.
Yeah, and it's so little that, it's not dangerous, so it can't be too much.
Stephen says a colleague of a family member up here has been doing microscale medical equipment recycling for 2 to 3 decades. Full lab in the backyard shop, all to code, fully environmental suite,
Wow.
and dedicated air.
Now he makes good money.
Sounds good. I wouldn't mind doing that at all.
She loved tearing apart electronics up there in New York.
I had a lot of fun dealing with e-waste up in New York.
She was having fun until she screwed up her wrist. I did a similar thing yesterday, taking off lug nuts. This wrist is not feeling super great, but it's functional. I was playing musical tires on trucks there. Oh.
Well, yeah, you got to keep it in physical form.
They recycle the water there like they do in Phoenix? Yes, to some extent, absolutely.
It goes to golf courses and parks.
They use it for landscape irrigation, and they also use it to recharge the groundwater here.
Chris
they
says
also,
he's got the same issue. He was changing the pump on a washing machine.
Yeah. The other thing they do with Central Arizona Project water is they use it to recharge the groundwater because the CAP water has a higher mineral content than the natural groundwater. So by doing it that way, they kind of blend it and everything. It's complicated and expensive, and probably more complicated and expensive. It needs to be because it's a government job, but oh well. Yes, I know. They make all kinds of really neat tools. And the one problem is they're all, they don't give them to you. You go to Home Depot and say, hey, I need that. They don't go, well, here you are, sir. Have a good day. They seem to want me to take something of value from me too.
Yeah, it's only money. It's only money.
I don't know why they're so selfish about that. I mean, they got lots of money. Certainly, a little, power tool here and there is not going to hurt.
It's only money. The problem is when you don't have any, it kind of is a little bit annoying.
Yeah, it's frustrating sometimes because when you go for such a long period of time where you're always having to be careful how you spend your money, it just gets annoying, So I was using a 1/2-inch drive battery powered drill that was given to me, and I was breaking them loose with a star and then just taking them out. Well, one of them was a little tight. When I hit that drill, it just went ring because it was in low range and it had plenty of torque.
Whoa, Stephen, lucky for your dad.
Yeah.
A $1,500 saw for the price of a $300 drill.
Yeah. I also got another owie on my thumb here.
Boris has all kinds of money in somebody else's bank account.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty much the way it is.
Yeah, you never showed me that.
Wasn't it that Nigerian prince guy that was going to give me some cash? Whatever happened to that anyway?
I don't know. I'm owed money by about 30 Nigerian princes at this point.
Man, that sucks. Those guys are such deadbeats.
But it wouldn't matter because Chase limited my bank account yesterday.
Chase limited your bank account? Oh, the account that you don't have with Chase?
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, and my iPhone account has been suspended on my Android phone.
Oh, your Android phone that you don't have. Yeah.
No, my iPhone that I don't have has been suspended.
Yep.
Scammers.
Oh, we can borrow the door now, can't we? Because Tommy's not coming back.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. Oh,
Well, at least the manager made the mistake. It always works out better that way.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna
Yeah,
secure
Tracy's
the
got,
door while I'm
winging
thinking
it,
of it.
Tracy's got the DeWalt impact, but you're a mechanic for a living.
Yeah.
Forrest says he's working on his second million. He gave up on the first million.
Ah, that's a plan. You know, if at first you don't succeed, switch plans. Works for me. Oh, dearie. Well, do we have any other questions or anything? What is size best for a mining claim? In the United States, the maximum size is 20 acres for a load claim, and there's no sense going under that. So yeah, 20 acres is pretty much universal. In the case of a placer claim, you can have what they call an association claim, where each person has 20 acres of the claim, and up to 8 people, so you can have like 160 acres. But again, it's 20 acres per person per claim.
Oh, and Chris points out that the buzzword compliant term is pivot.
You mean as in changing plans?
Yes.
Ah.
You pivot. You embrace a new paradigm.
Ooh, embrace a new. See, she's a good wordsmith.
I have pivoted and I am embracing a new paradigm.
Yeah. See, most people would say I'm just new plan. She's embracing a new
How hard
paradigm.
is it to get a patented claim, and is it worth it?
If you were trying
have
to
buy them.
yeah, you'd pretty much have to buy one. They're not really patenting claims anymore, even though the law says they're supposed to. But trying to get the government to do something it doesn't feel like doing is pretty much impossible. And so,
of course, I'm buzzword compliant.
I say to get an unpatented claim patented nowadays is essentially impossible. Therefore, no, it's not worth it to try it.
I am multilingual.
If you want a patented claim,
I
buy
speak
one.
American, English, and buzzword.
You could also theoretically buy just ordinary private property that had the mineral rights attached, or you could buy private property that had open mineral rights underneath it that you could claim. That does happen also.
Chris says that if you can find one to purchase patented, do it.
Yeah.
Well, if it's got good stuff in it.
Well, it depends on what you're doing. I mean, if you just want a place to put a cabin, where Chris lives there in the Sierras, basically, yeah, any piece of private land there is worth money because it'll have scenery or something, bears, whatever, things people like. Yeah, but how long ago was that, Chris? Seems to me it was a long time, like in the 80s when they pretty much stopped it. Yeah, old Med, that sounds about right. Although in the United States, I think it was around 1980. Yeah, as a plan of operation, if you have expensive equipment there or this or that, then they have to kind of allow you to have somebody there for security. But it's not the same rights as a patented claim. Yeah, you can do that. Yes, Aries, things have changed a lot because these philosophy went from conservation and multiple use in the 60s to preservation and minimal use in the 1980s. Totally different way of doing things. Don't know about filing claims after nothing would surprise me at this point. Okay, we're kind of in uncharted territory here, and I don't see an easy way out. it's going to be problems no matter which way we get from here. So I don't know what to do. I'm just trying to increase my mobility. For a patented claim, yes, you have to prove that it's economically viable, and then get the government to give you the patent. Proving it's economically viable, you can still do. Getting the government to give you anything, that's a different thing. Yeah. Gonna go live in a hole? Well, buy an old missile silo. They're sturdily built, although most of them they blew up. Yeah, around Tucson here, they had like 27 Titan II missile silos, and they've all been essentially destroyed except for one, which was kept as a museum. It's really cool. You can go down into the silo and into the control room, and you can go down the tunnel and look at the missiles sitting in the silo. It's all defueled, and the door is half open with big giant concrete blocks to keep it from being open, so the Russians know we can't fire it. But it's pretty cool. You know, and it's an interesting thing to go see if you're in the Tucson area, Titan Missile Museum.
Patrick has a couple that were patented in 1902.
Yeah, back then it was simple paperwork thing, you know.
Have you seen a decrease in claim filings since people found out how hard it is to work a claim?
I don't know about that, but I know that when they implemented the claim holding fee, which I think was sometime in the 1980s, late 1980s, if I recall correctly. It used to be you could hold a claim and you just had to file your affidavit of assessment work and all that stuff. And nobody ever checked to make sure you did it, so it was easy to do. When they came up with the idea, we're going to implement a claim holding fee, where if you have less than 10 claims, you can file a small minor waiver and stay within the law of just assessment work. But if you have over 10 claims, then you have to pay us. It was $100 a year at the time, and they figured they were going to make all this money off of all these claim holders. Well, 90% of the claims went that year.
Well, Rick believes it's hairspray. It affected their brains. Yeah, probably.
I think it's the educational system, actually, Rick.
And there are some silos in Kansas, according to Dee Dee, that people purchased and were turning into doomsday shelters. Yeah.
Now, were those the Titan II or the Atlas silos? Because the Atlas silos, they were actually laying on their side, and they had an erector. So you had like a big garage, you know, that was horizontal, whereas the Titan silo is all vertical, and it's not nearly as useful.
There's a company in Kansas that turns them into luxury doomsday shelters. They pick up the old Atlas silos. I've seen videos on it.
Yeah, so the Atlas silos are much better for that.
I haven't seen the Titan silos done that way, Dee Dee, but
yeah.
I do know a lot of the Atlas were.
Yeah, the Titan silos, you know, they're kind of snug. Yes, I've been into a Titan silo. The hallway is pretty narrow, and the control room area is not that big. I mean, it's not as big as a normal house at all. And
Or
the silo itself is only like
$36 now for the holding fee.
Yeah, and the silo itself is only like, you know, 20 feet in diameter or less. So it's not terribly well constructed for living space. Silver, gold, rare earths, definitely with the technology, rare earths for magnets and electronics, absolutely.
If you can mine them here.
They're working on it. Well, yeah, next year, who knows? This year, the administration is working on making it easier for us to compete with China. Who knows? There may be certain other critical minerals, you know, like cobalt, nickel, things like that. Most of those, I don't think we actually have any ore bodies here. Lithium, yes, lithium is another one, absolutely, for batteries.
In Ontario, it's a fee per year per claim square and must do a certain dollar amount of work every year to keep the claim valid. It's basically the same thing down here, Stephen.
Yeah, except you don't have to pay the fee and the work.
And
it's one or the other.
Vila says lithium is next.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I would think that water collecting at the bottom of the silo would be an issue, Dee Dee.
Yeah.
Though I have seen some Atlas silos that really look good when they were done.
Yeah, so an Atlas silo is much more functionally geometrical than a Titan silo.
Rick Jobling says grill cream and grease lightning. It's the only way forward. I can get behind that.
I'm not even sure what that means, but
I can get
I'll
behind
go for
that,
it.
Rick.
How do you determine the work for a claim?
Well, some things that are not allowed. You can't count your assays, the last I remember, toward your small claims assessment work. You can count road improvements. You can count any tunneling, any drilling. I believe you can count ground support.
And also your maintenance on the claim monuments and stuff.
And the maintenance on claim monuments and stuff. And basically, most people will take the prevailing wage per hour in their area and work, figure out how many hours comes up to like the $200 or whatever. Yeah, Dee Dee, that's right. You can count trash removal. We did that one year.
I agree winging it. They're looking to reopen the mountain pass mine. Yeah, panning doesn't count. Yeah. Oh yeah. We've got the Peacekeeper missiles. Where are they at? Utah? Someplace like that. We got like, what was it? 100 of them? Maybe not that. Maybe it was 100 shelters and 10 missiles. I don't know. It's a relatively small number of missiles, but it allows, a good counter value strike capability. And then we have our submarines that can do that too.
I wouldn't mind owning a missile silo. I like missile silos.
It used to be a lot harder to hit a target precisely from a submarine. So we needed the land-based missiles for accurate hits, where you had a target where you really had to hit it precisely. And now the submarine-based missiles are essentially as accurate. And we're using nuclear warhead and it lands within 50 feet of the impact point. That's close enough, And so the
don't they get
submarines
above the ground?
Depends on what you're trying to take out. But the submarines are more survivable in many ways. And so, they really haven't kept much in the way of a land-based missile deterrent. Not sure what they've done in terms of the air carried, air launch cruise missiles and stuff like that. I know they just upgraded the gravity bomb, dial yield, anywhere from half a kiloton to 300 kilotons. Just set it and forget it. It must be nice, huh? And, it's what's the yield, and do you want it air burst, surface burst, subsurface burst?
Aries has a compliment for you.
Well, thank you, Aries. I'm glad you're happy. We try and make it. I try and make it interesting and useful at the same time. Don't know how accurate. I mean, how well I've accomplished that, but I do try.
Those Gulf War laser guided bunker busters were really something.
Well, yeah, the problem with the laser guided bunker buster is you need somebody firing a laser at the target, which makes it a little more complicated. Nowadays, they can do it with GPS and inertial guidance systems.
Instant open pit mine.
Not quite, but we're working on it. It's the what was it? The MOP would be more for an open pit. The massive ordnance penetrator, a 30,000-pound bunker buster.
We need fart bombs. Yes, we do.
Well, the other thing that people don't realize is we're going to smaller and smaller warheads as the precision gets better and better. You need less and less kaboom to get the job done. And
Aries says we need fart bombs, and David Villa says I can help in that.
yeah.
I am a firm believer in fart bombs.
Well, we have, for example, what they call a small diameter bomb. It's 100-pound bomb. But again, it lands like, that far from the impact point, somewhere in this 1 yard circle it's going to land. And with a delayed fuse, they could literally drop it on a house like this house here. They could put it in the bedroom and eviscerate the house. And the only thing that would damage the neighboring house would be the debris landing on their roofs.
Stephen points out dozens of little tactical nukes instead of a few big ones. Can we get off the subject of doomsday weapons? Life is already negative enough at the moment.
Okay, let's talk about spiders.
Oh, be quiet, Bear. Bad Bear.
Yes, Russia's new hypersonic weapon could be unstoppable, but ours already is. Yep. I mean, I
Good
forgot.
point, Alt Med.
What?
Who needs bombs when we have psyops?
Yeah, it's a lot more efficient, a lot more cost effective.
Yeah, no spiders. No spiders. Well, spiders are not in my worldview. Thank you very much.
Dee Dee likes spiders.
Well, I will be happy to come visit you, Dee Dee, as long as you don't keep them as pets. I mean, then I would have to stay far away from your house.
Patrick, without getting too much into politics, I can't see how it's going to be any better. And certainly that side, the philosophy in the past has not been kind
Amenable
to resource exploitation. So I would not anticipate things getting any better if we don't keep what we got going here.
Alt Med had a pet black widow. Yeah, I ran into a tarantula in the shed last week. It's like I noped out of there really quick. Ain't gonna happen. Bear likes tarantulas and they crawl on him. It's disgusting. Well, I don't blame you. I don't like brown recluse spiders either.
There's a fair amount of tarantulas here. Yes. And yeah, they're a lot safer than rattlesnakes. A bite from a tarantula, your major danger is infection. They don't polish their fangs.
The question for Dee Dee, they say they kind of live with their spiders. Are the spiders confined or are they free roaming spiders? And how big are they?
It's California. They're not that big.
Okay.
Yeah, Dee Dee. How bad was that? Probably when you're 10 years old, that was not too pleasant. Yeah, Stephen. Well, that was kind of funny when we had Anders over at the Good Enough, and I was hoping we'd see some rattlesnakes in the mine tunnel there because Anders from Sweden, he'd never seen a rattlesnake in the wild. Didn't see one.
Okay, Bear. Note, before we go visit Dee Dee, I need Tyvek body armor and booties.
Okay. And so when we were climbing up to the next level there, and I was using a walking stick, and I planted it in that bush, and the bush rattled, and I was too close.
Alt Med,
luckily it didn't strike.
I will tell a story here. The reason I dislike spiders, long ago and far away, there was a movie called Tarantula. It was in black and white.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, this is an utter B movie, okay? We're talking seriously rotten plot.
B-. Yeah.
I was a kid. There is one scene in this movie where the tarantulas swarm over this cow and eat it to a skeleton like they're piranha fish or something. And the movie actually ends when they wake up in the morning and there's this strange silver haze everywhere and the sun isn't shining bright. And then the camera zooms out and the tarantula, a giant tarantula, has the entire town encased in a cocoon ready to be eaten. So yeah, I was little, I was a kid, it scared the ever-loving crap out of me, and ever since then, the very next week, I was up in my grandmother's hayloft over the barn, and my cousin was chasing me with a pitchfork. And I ran around a corner amongst the hay bales because she had them stacked with little corridors. And I came and I got a spider web with a large hay spider on it right in the face. That was the end of me wanting anything to do with spiders, period. They are not in my worldview. Yeah, they're slow and not a problem at all, except they do attack. I have seen them. They will jump at you. Most spiders will run away from you. Tarantulas will jump at you. That is not a good thing. Spiders are pathological like this, okay? Yeah, and I know it's conditioning, and I know that, psychotherapy might help, but I just prefer to stay away from spiders. Now, mind you, I'm not afraid of them per se. I mean, I won't climb up on a chair and start screaming if I see one. But I try to avoid them because I don't believe in killing things unnecessarily. So I try to avoid spiders rather than kill them. And obviously, if they're in somebody's household, then I'm going to respect them as long as they don't try to climb on me. If they try to climb on me, well, that's, forget it. But game over. Any spider that tries to attack me is going to become a wet splot. And I will be screaming bloody murder when I wet splot it. Bear can tell you he has seen what I do to flying cockroaches. He hears blood-curdling screams, and you can't even tell it used to be a cockroach because I have beaten it to death with the first object I could find.
Well, I'm going to have to get ready for bed here soon. You guys can vote if you all want to sit here and keep talking with Eva and each other. That's fine with me.
Well, I've got
Otherwise,
a few
I'm gonna
other
have
things to do, Bear, like dishes. I'm not going to tackle the mess inside the canner right now.
Anyhow, it's been another great Sunday night, everybody. I've had a good time. Anyone else got any last-minute mining questions here?
Oh, and Aries says, should have seen my old man when he went to dispatch
Yeah,
a
I saw.
rattlesnake and his flashlight went out.
You're welcome, Stephen. Good night, Forrest. Thanks
Good
for the
night,
help.
everybody. We will have more fun and interesting stuff from the Adobe Hovel next week. So remember, if you have any mining questions, write them down so that you can stump this dude next week.
Yeah, I don't think you can stump the community, though. Thank you, Aries.
What I don't want to run into, by the way, is a Schrodinger spider, one where you're not sure whether it's there or not.
And don't forget, folks, we need so you can come up with the best material to put in a gold pan to make the fine gold stick to it. I think Chris may win on this one. He's got an assignment. I'm going to do bacon grease, and we'll see how well that works.
Well, somebody's got to try ghee, clarified butter, and let's find out how this works.
I don't have a problem with that. But anyhow, pine oil possibly. It's hard to find, though.
Good night.
Thank you. Yeah, say the beach gold. Because the nice thing about beach gold is that it's plentiful. You just got to chase it down. It changes its location. Yes, she is a smart lady. Yep. All righty, everyone. 10-second warning. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy prospecting and keep it safe out there.